How was the Uzumaki patriarch supposed to know that his cousin liked weddings so much? Had he and Kushina known this, they would have just gotten she to plan their wedding. His meticulous planning was a grand eye-opener to them all. He even said that he wouldn't mind helping the others plan their weddings. Naruto could only assume wedding planning was a woman's hobby, since the majority of the women in his clan were quick to take him up on his offer. Hell, she was more than thrilled to plan Yukimaru and Hanabi's, which was set to not come for several years. The only way to placate him was to tell him that they had to consult the Hyuga clan before they made any further arrangements. Damn it, stop bothering Naruto. You're not gonna calm him down by hounding him, Riza said, slamming Kakashi into the side of the wall. In the absence of traditional clothes befitting a ceremony, Riza and numerous others were given simple woven robes to wear. I'm almost done, she said while Riza scowled. She grabbed Shi's arm and dragged him out before she took one last look at Naruto. Looking good, Naruto, Riza claimed before she guided Shi out. Naruto and Sasuke watched them go before they turned to see Kakashi slide down on the ground. The two looked at each other and shook their heads. This was going to be a long day no matter what happened. How long does it take to get ready for a fucking wedding? We've been sitting here all day, Tayuya snarled as she tapped her finger on her arm while sitting on a wooden bench outside the Shinigami shrine where Shion stayed. A statue of the god of death had been constructed and laid there, along with walls lined with the Shinigami's masks. Is there anything you're ever happy about? Karui asked, sitting next to her with a curious expression. Tayuya snorted. Of course, there are things that make me happy. Being in a damn dressy robe isn't what I want to be doing with my time, the fiery redhead claimed. Even less did she like sitting so close to the two bastards who killed her. Sure, she'd gotten somewhat over it, but that tree still hurt, damn it, and she wanted to do other things than sit around and wait for her shithead clan head to get married. Maybe you need to get married. Maybe it'd mellow you out, Yugao mentioned, smirking when Tayuya glared at her. Please, as if there's any guy who could handle me, Tayuya retorted. Yugao rolled her eyes, as did Karui and Omoi. Atsui laughed while Samui didn't bother paying more attention to the conversation than necessary. On the other side of the room, Ino sighed. Can you guys believe, Naruto, of all people, is going to get married before the rest of us? She asked incredulously. Still don't know how I feel about the whole mom thing. I dunno if I could go through with that, Choji replied, making Ino and the others grimace when they saw the Akamichi heir's eyes glued to the celebration food prepared at the table. Yes, it is unusual. I'm unsure if I could accept such a thing, but I respect Naruto-san for making his own choices. He's no longer the troublemaker we've all known growing up. If he believes this is his way to achieve happiness, then I will not judge him. I believe many have brought their concerns before him already, Shino answered, surprisingly not so covered up in his appearance this time. Well, I'll admit his mom is kinda hot. He's lucky in a really messed up kinda way. Still, Hinata, why didn't you unite with your clan in coming to the land of eddies? My mother told me this is the place where almost everyone wants to be, Kiba said. Truth be told, he didn't see what the big deal was that made Uzushio so special. Kiba-kun, you shouldn't talk like that about the bride, especially not if Naruto-kun can hear it. I don't think you'll survive if you do. As for your other question, I did journey with my family. Father simply invited me to become the diplomat between the Hyuga in the land of eddies and those who stayed in Konoha. I had a long talk with Kurenai-sensei about it, Hinata replied. Kiba waved off her concern but blinked. So you'll still be in Konoha? He asked. When I can, she answered. It was hard for her to leave her friends as well, but Hinata truly wished to see where this new life in the land of eddies would lead. Truth be told, if Neji had bothered to try and stay in Konoha, then she would have attempted to as well. However, it seemed that he was willing to start anew in the land of eddies instead of the land of fire. Even Tenten moved with him while Guy and Lee remained in Konoha. Kiba hummed. He turned his head and watched more guests flood in. While the gifts presented were hardly the quality that many wanted, the nations offered only the best of what they could. The Inuzuka spotted Shikamaru and the Kazecage's sister talking to each other fondly, or at least what could be considered fond for the Nara. Even Shikamaru's getting somewhere. First Naruto, then fucking Sasuke, and now Shikamaru. What are the rest of us even doing? The Inuzuka inquired, a low growl coming from his lips while Akamaru looked on almost sighing to himself. On the outside, Fuka laughed as she bumped shoulders with Gurren. So when is it your turn? She inquired. None of your business. How about you catch up before you start poking your nose in my business? Gurren fired back, making Fuka laugh. Oh come now, surely you and Kotetsu have discussed such a future. Come on, Gurren, you can tell us. Fuka said. Gurren scowled before she glanced at Komachi, the latter clearly just as interested in the story as her other cousin. I'm not telling you anything because there's nothing to tell. Now fuck off. Gurren exclaimed, clenching her fists angrily. Perhaps we should stop teasing her, Komachi added, the former Anbu not enjoying making her cousin upset. Finally, Fuka relented until they noticed several political figures headed toward them. Great, and here come to bootlickers, Gurren mumbled. Fuka swiftly put on her best smile and greeted them while Komachi blinked. Problem? She asked. The blue-haired Uzumaki snorted. Nothing. I know you can't stop politics no matter what you do. The bastards just remind me of Orochimaru. They always offer you what you think you want until you find out the only thing you've gotten is shit. So no, I don't have a high opinion of them. Still, I guess we'll have to put up with them. As the land of Eddie's daimyo, Haku has gotten used to that political environment. Given Naruto's new title, it's a given that many would want to curry favor with him, Gurren claimed. Komachi slowly nodded. Then we'll have to make sure that we don't drag him down. Besides, we'll find ourselves in that environment as well since we'll be tasked with making constant journeys to the other nations. Not to mention we have to continue looking for these Otsutsuki that could be hiding amongst the people. I don't think Uzumaki Fuinjutsu has been more prized by the cage than right now, Komachi voiced, making Gurren sigh. Yes, we'll even have to teach Yukimaru to be cautious. I only hope that I don't ruin his cheerful ways. I gave him more grief than I could hope to atone for. Had not Naruto discovered us, I'm not sure what I would have done. I wondered if I could keep Yukimaru as innocent as always, but he will continue to grow no matter how much I don't want him to. Now, I just have to do my best to prepare him, Gurren said. Komachi touched her cousin's arm. You won't do it alone. You will have all of us. Yukimaru can be as innocent as he wants on our island while out there he can apply all that he's learned, and hopefully he can learn to become a good husband for Hanabi, Komachi advised. Gurren slowly nodded with a small smile on her face before she noticed other politicians, businessmen and delegates approaching them. She rolled her eyes and welcomed them as best she could. Meanwhile, Amaru approached, gathering the attention of all the people. Everyone, we'll be starting soon. Please take your seats. Amaru proclaimed. Gurren and Komachi stilled before they quickly dismissed the guests and ordered people to take their positions. Musicians quickly presented themselves while lines of people took their seats or stood near the side of the open road. Amaru passed by Haku, Sasama, and a few other members of the Fuma clan. Did you ever think you'd see the day when you'd be celebrating a mom and son getting married? Amaru inquired while Haku chuckled, using her robe to cover her mouth as she was trained to do. Never, but then again, Naruto-sama is known for accomplishing the impossible, isn't he? Haku asked. Amaru smiled as she joined the main family inside. Yeah, he definitely is, Amaru said as she managed to find her seat next to Yura and Yuri. Then, the music began. It seemed so funny to Naruto. After everything they'd been through, even now his heart hadn't stopped pounding. He looked outside at the beautiful lands of Uzushio. Multitudes stood or sat from the shrine all the way to the shoreline. The music, though pleasant, might as well have been like the drums of war to his ears. Due to his natural abilities as a censor, he spotted the countless close friends and guests who cared to attend. Sasuke and Kakashi had already rejoined the others, thus leaving him alone. He inhaled and exhaled. Marriage. Who would have thought that he'd ever get married? Even more, it was a marriage that seemed to defy all known sense, both morally and spiritually. Yet, how could Naruto live up to his title of unpredictable if he were so easy to figure out? Of course, the blonde was aware of the controversy surrounding today. Many showed up or even protested his marriage, and he held them no resentment. Nevertheless, he cared not for the opinions of others. He simply thought of his mother and a smile came to his face when he thought of her. Then, it seemed like all his worries faded away. The sun was out, the clouds were clear, and the smell of the perfect air was enough to make him wish for no better a day. We've really been through a lot, haven't we, Ka-chan? Naruto asked, fixing his clothes one more time. Yes, and we'll be through more as long as you'll have me. Quickly recognizing his mother's voice, Naruto slowly turned around and his blue eyes took in the sight of peerless beauty. His mother stood before him in her perfectly designed white kimono. Her lips were colored with red lipstick like it was painted with fresh strawberries. Her face shined against the glow of the sun. To put it simply, she was perfect, utterly perfect. For many who knew, when a man looked at a woman in her wedding garment, it was just like discovering that first love all over again. Her eyes sparkled and the blush on her cheeks from his intense gaze made his chest burn with passion. Is there a problem? Why you're staring, Databane, Kushina said, suddenly finding herself very shy against her son's intense stare. Little had he known that a full minute passed by as he looked her over. Finally, Naruto seemed to find himself and spoke. You look so beautiful, he said. That simple sentence was all it took for Kushina's knees to go weak. One of the most feared kunoichi throughout the entire elemental nations found herself weak before the honest compliments brought her way. She opened her mouth and closed it again. Such a sensation she hadn't felt even with Minato. Yes, he knew the way to her heart as well, but Naruto made even her very soul tremble. Her entire being surrendered to him in both love and simplicity. You don't look half bad yourself, Kushina commented, gazing upon her son's handsome face. If anyone told her that she'd be getting married a second time, after dying, and especially with her own son, she'd call them utterly insane. Yet, that was exactly where she stood. She also wished never to be anywhere else. Kushina's breath hitched in her throat when her son approached her. His steps were careful and paced, the thud of the wood making his coming all the more intense. When he stood before her, Kushina lifted her head and stared at him. In light and in darkness, I swear, Ka-chan, I will make you happy. I will make you the happiest woman in all the elemental nations, Naruto proclaimed earnestly, not even letting Kushina stare away from him out of shyness. She was forced to bear the full force of his fierce gaze and the words of his promise which carried so much care for her. I know. And you never go back on your word, right? Kushina asked, flashing her eyelashes at him. He nodded before the two heard the door open behind them. Both noticed Makoto and Riza standing there. Kushina, you look so beautiful. Look at that smile, it looks like no one can take it away, her best friend said. Kushina's eyes gleamed, giving a full-blown smile, teeth and all. And Sochi got all the village leaders to cover the costs. That's the real wedding present right there, Databane. Kushina exclaimed while Riza's eyes lingered on Naruto. A man fit for his bride. Everyone's waiting. Are you guys ready? The cousin of Kushina questioned. Naruto and Kushina looked at each other. Kushina never thought her son would have such a wide, confident, mature, reassuring smile on his face. Never could she have known just how nervous he felt and just how scared he felt. Let's go, Ka-chan, Naruto said, staring forward. Kushina clasped her son's hand and exhaled one time. Minato, I promise that you will always have a place in my heart. However, today, I walk in front of others again to be wed to my son. I don't know if you'd approve or not, but, when I am with him, I feel like I can withstand anything, and I know in my deepest heart that he loves me just as much if not more than you do. And, I find myself responding to that love. I love him so much. I love him so much that my chest won't stop beating. I want to give him everything. I will give him everything. I will always be his, Kushina said to herself. Naruto grabbed his mother's hand and they stepped through the door, the sun beaming with its warming strength as the music in their ears got louder and louder. With one final step, Kushina and Naruto stepped from one room and entered the shrine's main hall where all their closest friends and family spotted them. Each of them remained seated when their eyes happened upon her. People found themselves stunned into silence when they looked upon Kushina. Though they sat there, the reality of the matter finally made them acknowledge that Uzumaki Naruto and Uzumaki Kushina were set to be married. The Hyuga sat with the Uzumaki as one family while others looked on. Naruto spotted Iruka and Konohamaru in the distance, both of them smiling in pride as they watched him. Kushina turned to her son and he to her. Both grinned, continuing to walk in confidence as people took in the beauty of the bride. There was something to say about natural simplicity. While Kushina's kimono was hardly the most expensive or well-designed, it was a product of the beautiful creation of the world and strewn together by the skilled hands of dedicated seamstresses. Her beauty was a product of the very earth itself, as if she'd been blessed to be the only one to wear the fruits of its great bounty. The flower in her hair only enhanced the beauty of her visage. The former Kyuubi Jinchuriki rested her hand on her fiancé's arm, him guiding her toward their awaited destiny. She looks so beautiful, Yuri whispered, making her sister nod. Yes, she does, Yura replied softly while Shion stood before them all. The two sisters spotted their lover's gaze on them momentarily. Do you think I'll look that good when it's my turn? Yuri asked. Unable to help herself, Yura giggled, covering her mouth quickly. If you're anything like our mother, then yes. You look just as beautiful, Yuri, and I hope I will too, Yura responded. Kushina and Naruto appeared before Shion, the Uzumaki priestess. Shion slowly stood up and cleared her throat. She opened her hands and spoke. Shinigami-sama, the people have gathered, and your shrine has been rebuilt. Shinigami-sama, it was by your hand that this couple has appeared before you and garnered your favor. May you bless their union, and may that represent that though none of us are free from death, still yet shall we joyfully rejoice in knowing that such makes life only more beautiful and worth living at every opportunity. May we never disregard this blessing, and may this couple never disregard this union for your name's sake, Shion said, burning pleasant candles and incense before the masks of the Shinigami. Little did many know that the god of death found himself surveying the presentation. With eyes narrowed, he wove his hand and his energy smote the candlesticks. Orange fires quickly turned a deep white, making many gasp while others took it as a sign that the Shinigami indeed blessed this union, even if the other gods did not. Shion rang a bell while Kushina and Naruto respectfully bowed their heads, fully aware that had not the Shinigami shown such interest in the latter, their lives would never have reached this point. For this, Naruto made sure to convey just how much he appreciated the Shinigami for the future which he had bestowed upon them. Shion faced Naruto and Kushina, presenting them both with sake cups, carefully constructed from the mountains of Iwagakure. Shion poured sake in one small cup. This cup symbolizes your commitment to Shinigami-sama. May you both find strength in his embrace and understanding in his teachings, she said. Naruto sipped the cup and then Kushina followed. She glanced at Naruto, smiling before Shion presented a larger cup to them. This cup symbolizes your commitment to each other. Life will be harder and marriage will be harder, but you are not alone. Together, you can, and will, overcome anything. Bound are you both to each other until time itself withers away. Though time withers away, your care and your love will not, Shion stated. Naruto copies his action, accepting the cup. Kushina quickly followed after him. Shion then presented a third cup, this one larger than even the second one. The third cup symbolizes the people. Grow our clan and our clan shall bless you with comfort, strength, loyalty, and honor. When you pass on your techniques to your children, may you teach them and instruct them as you in turn were taught, Shion said. Naruto immediately blushed, as did Kushina. Even Tayuya snorted, quickly covering her when a few glanced in her direction. What? That shit was funny, Tayuya hissed softly while Naruto took the third cup. He sipped it and then Shion passed it to Kushina. The redhead sipped it as well until it was done. Shion slowly bowed her head to them, smiling warmly while all her cracked lesions came to fruition for this one moment. Now, the couple shall express their vows toward themselves, and toward Shinigami-sama, Shion explained. Naruto and Kushina stood up and faced each other. As I said before, in light and in darkness, I will always stand at your side, Ka-chan. I will make you happy, this I swear. I will never allow Shin to feel he made the wrong choice in giving you back to me. And I swear to love you, protect you, and honor you as you deserve. You reside in my heart until the end of time, Naruto said. Kushina exhaled slowly. Sochi, you are the love of my life and the pride of my days. Despite all that I put on you, still you not only forgave me, but you loved me and made me love you in turn. When I was young, Mito Bachan said that to combat evil, the heart must be filled with love. And, my heart has never been filled with more love from you than this one moment. If you will have me, then I will have you, and we will have each other. I love you. I love you so much. I submit to you and I surrender to you as my husband and as our clan patriarch. Whether the nations are thrown down, whether we lose everything, whether we become something else, know that I will never abandon you. I will love you, cherish you, keep you, and honor you until the end of time. This, I also swear to you, and to the Shinigami, Kushina replied. Naruto took her hands with his while Shion smiled. Now would be the time that we exchange the wedding bands, but Given the state of affairs, I don't believe that we have. Shion stopped suddenly as everyone noticed white fire surrounding Kushina and Naruto. Some jumped up in fright, but they quickly stopped when they saw the couple standing amongst the flames happily. Their eyes widened as the flames seared into their skin. One strand tied the other together, taking the shape of two small rings of flame enough to cover the finger. The two flames slowly disappeared as the crowd settled. Naruto and Kushina looked at each other and then at their ring fingers. Though there was nothing there, but felt something almost heavy on those fingers, like there was something there that didn't need to be seen by anyone else. Yet, they felt at peace with each other, the white flames of Honsho mixing between them, reinforcing its might with them so close together. That is all I shall do for you, Shikyo. Regard your human festivities fondly, the shinigami said before he faded away, heading back to his own business. What the hell was that? Yuya asked, which no one seemed to have the answer to. Nevertheless, Kushina and Naruto remained completely serene, staring at each other blissfully. Finally, the blonde turned to Shion. It's alright, Shion, we can continue. I don't think we'll be needing those rings, Naruto commented. Shion blinked as she looked at Kushina for confirmation. The redhead nodded, allowing the priestess to clear her throat. Very well, I believe we will continue onward. Now, that we have come before the shinigami, now we shall step before the ancestors of our great clan in a resurrected Uzumaki marriage tradition. Everyone, if you feel so included, please follow the bride and groom as they make their way toward to sea, Shion said. As expected, many looked confused. Even most of the members of the Uzumaki clan seemed unsure of what Shion was talking about. Ah, what Uzumaki marriage tradition? Yukimaru whispered to Hanabi. She looked at him curiously. Shouldn't I be asking you that? She replied. The young man rubbed the back of his head before Riza spoke. You'll learn. All of you will learn it. Hopefully, you'll be able to do the same when it's your time. Your father and I did it as well, she said, turning her gaze to Yuya. Her daughter frowned but continued to watch as Naruto and Kushina stepped down from the stairs. Her hand on his arm, the smile on her face was entirely infectious as the two walked out to the rest of the masses. From civilians to veteran shinobi, many were stunned to silence as Naruto and Kushina walked down the dirt road. No one seemed ready to speak a word of even congratulations, instead choosing to immerse themselves in the couple's serene desires. The main guests followed after them and the guests outside quickly advanced as well. What's going on? Someone asked one of the main guests. Some sort of Uzumaki marriage tradition, another explained. Kushina and Naruto made their way toward the Uzushio shoreline, her head on his shoulder. Naruto touched her arm, causing her to look at him. She sighed. During that night, if there was one regret I had, it was that I wouldn't get to see you perform this tradition with your wife. I never thought I'd be doing it with you, Kushina admitted, sporting a faint blush on her face. Funny, I always imagined I'd be doing it with you, Naruto answered, making Kushina's blush deepen. Once they approached the shoreline, Naruto noticed Tazuna and Inari standing there. The two silently smiled and offered Naruto brief bows. They then stepped away while the multitudes gathered behind them. Amongst the crowd, Shion pushed through and stood before them. Since the founding of our clan, the whirlpools have protected us and established our identity. Though this world has been created, the first mark of the restored Uzumaki clan shall leave its mark by the hand of its patriarch and matriarch. They will embrace the whirlpools together and, in the midst of them, will etch their names amongst the pools where the sea swirls, for so too shall their union swirl and engulf many in the blessings which they provide, Shion said. Naruto took Kushina's hand and led her away from the crowd. Once they were safe, the two undressed until nothing was left. All that damn work on my makeup only to have it ruined by seawater. I think some of my makeup artists are gonna be upset, Kushina said as she stretched, enjoying the sun on her body. The redhead turned her head and saw her son staring at her, the purest essence of lust plastered across his face. It seemed odd that given that her son had seen her naked plenty of times, his arousal was still so evident of her. It did wonders for her self-confidence. Of course, he wasn't bad to look at either. Kushina absently bit her lip when she looked at the results of his training burned into his body. He looked so strong, so powerful. If he wanted, he could subdue her in his strength as a man and just. Should we get moving? We don't have all day, Kushina said while Naruto managed to tear his gaze away. Why yeah, let's go, he said as the two walked into the sea until they were entirely submerged. The two shivered from how cold the water felt. Yet, they stared out into the open ocean, the perfect, clean environment bestowing the bountiful sea life within it. The fish swam away from them while Kushina pointed further out. Naruto nodded and the two swam out into the ocean. The two would resurface for air every so often before dropping back down. The closer they got to the dangerous whirlpools, the more they noticed the lack of sea animals. The current also strengthened as they drew near, furiously pulling them along. After nearly half an hour of underwater traveling, the couple finally discovered the treacherous whirlpools. As expected of the land of Eddie's natural defensive measure, over 3 whirlpools spun vigorously in front of them. Naruto had to hold Kushina in his arms lest the both of them enter the full brunt of the whirlpool. For this moment, they prepared to honor the Uzumaki tradition and face the whirlpools with a full chance of death. Naruto even asked the shinigami that, should he not survive, he would not be resurrected. If many of his clansmen performed this tradition and survived, then they would do the same or share the same fate. Naruto and Kushina were pulled toward the whirlpools with reckless abandon. Naruto was forced to stick to the ocean floor lest his new wife be torn out of his hands. The need for air was heavy and the ocean seemed to thunder heavily as they held each other. Kushina pointed to a rock structure. Naruto nodded and they inched toward it, using Kushina's chains as a means to anchor themselves. Kushina grimaced before Naruto kissed her, sharing what air they had between each other. Suffering through the ordeal together, they ventured further into the whirlpool, each one a devastating torrent of natural violence. The pressure on their lungs was heavy, and their bodies burned on more than one occasion. After a moment, Naruto summoned a tower of shadow clones. They pushed the original and Kushina into the air, giving them much-needed oxygen before being pulled back down. They did this over and over until they were at the very center of the whirlpools. Naruto glanced left and right, the water almost making everything blurry from the wretched cycling of the pools. With time, he spotted a rather strange piece of raised rock. Taking his mother's hand, he bade her to follow him. She silently agreed and they swam for the rock. The closer they got, the sooner they realized that the raised rock was an underwater cave, somehow stable amongst the fierceness of the underwater cyclones. They swam inside and continued until they came up to a wall. As soon as his eyes lay on that wall, Naruto knew that this would be a perfect spot. Amongst the terror, cruelty, viciousness, and unrelenting force of the whirlpools, yet would that some danger protect their bond in this cave, a place where their marriage might grow and be sustained. Thumbing over to the wall, Naruto channeled chakra into his finger and wrote his name into the rock. Understanding, Kushina did the same and both channeled their chakra into rock, preserving it for numerous years. As more and more Uzumaki made this tradition, the rock would remain strengthened to the very ends of time itself. Acting quickly, Naruto gathered some rocks and made a small shrine, placing the rocks one on top of the other. He then bit his thumb and wrote a sealing jutsu on the altar. He turned to his mother. His eyes brightened. So as this seal protects that wall, so too will I protect you, Ka-chan, he thought. Their tradition done, the two were free to return home however they wished. Opening a portal, the two stepped inside and appeared back on the beach where they'd left their clothes. Upon sandy shores next to their wedding attire laid a change of clothes and towels. Before Kushina could even grab one or the other, her son pulled her to him and kissed her. He kissed her deeply, sucking in all the air she'd managed to inhale. Her heart swooned with love and her body trembled with pleasure. Now, he was no longer just her son. He was her husband, her sweet, powerful husband. His tongue was hot, a wonderful contrast to the cold of his body. His lips smacked against hers while her right hand cradled his cheek. When they parted, Naruto smiled and Kushina panted. Keep doing that and they'll be wondering if we ever made it back, she said. Then, I guess we should get going, Naruto said. The two dried themselves off and changed their clothes. Walking hand in hand, they journeyed back to the shoreline. When they returned, the newly married couple were presented with the cheers, hollers, and congratulations of thousands. Flower petals blew in the wind while Kushina pushed some of her hair out of the way. She cheekily grinned while Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Seeing this, Shion slowly acknowledged them both. May this union never be broken, she proclaimed before everyone. The cheering only grew louder as Naruto, feeling rather brazen, kissed his mother in front of everyone much to her shock. More than a few remained neutral to the concept of such a union, yet the vast majority were willing to celebrate the matter as evidenced by their celebration. In response to her son, Kushina threw her arms around his neck while he pulled her up by her waist. Individuals looked on until the celebration exploded all over the island. Until the setting of the sun, the reception for Naruto and Kushina's wedding fueled the entire island. Fire pits were constructed and festive drums were struck. Talented dancers and musicians worked hard, entertaining the masses while friends, allies, and families shared precious water and fresh juice squeezed and crushed from various fruits. As should be the case, Naruto and Kushina became the center of attention, never spending more than a minute or two apart from each other. As the hosts, they greeted everyone who was willing to come to them. Of course, some were more troublesome than others. A few political groups came to them, seeking future meetings or business prospects. Both, the married couple were willing to consider at a later time. The smell of grilled fish and seasoned meats were enough to stir even the most determined appetites. As the earth was still in the midst of its reconstruction, obviously some traditions couldn't be honored yet. The gifts were sparse on both sides. Yet, everyone accepted what they were given to the best of their ability. Chuki even offered Naruto a coupon for free ramen for half a year. If the blonde was being bribed about where to put funds for the construction of the village, then it was definitely working. It also seemed that in the 7 months, photography had, somehow returned. Of course, this was a great benefit as numerous pictures were taken. Naruto held his new bride as close as possible to him while photos flew aplenty. Now, it'd take some time to circulate them, but Kushina quickly made sure that photos would be mailed back to the island. She'd make sure to have every one of them framed. Each person of the Uzumaki clan also came together for a family photo, surrounding Naruto and Kushina. Naruto even invited Hiyashi, Hazashi, and a few other close Hyuga. They all joined in, Yukimaru smiling as he held a grilled piece of meat in his hand, much to the amusement of everyone else. Naruto even met with Jiraiya and Tsunade, who came together as each other's dates. The Sannin took the time to not only congratulate Naruto but also to express apologies for the prophecy given to him by Gamamaru, the great toad sage. Of course, Naruto bore no ill will to his teacher, even allowing Yahiko and Konan to greet their former teacher together. That left a memorable reunion for all of them. Keep this knucklehead in his place, Kushina. A husband has a way of messing with his wife, Tsunade said. Kushina chuckled as she watched Naruto take pictures with Yuri and Yura, the sisters smiling. Don't worry, I'll be there to rein him in. I did it with Minato on more than one occasion, she answered. Immediately, Mei appeared next to them. And be sure to rehydrate. Your husband is a Jinchuriki and a powerful shinobi. Plus, I remember you said that you both have done even the harsher Uzumaki tradition. I'm sure he's on the verge of breaking right now. The only question is, are you? The Mizukage inquired, smiling knowingly at Kushina. Shut up. Kushina said, pushing her cousin to the side much to Mei's amusement. Tsunade rolled her eyes as the festivities continued. The party around the land of Eddies continued very late into the night. Multitudes began the journey back to their own nations. Others, either too tired or too full, decided to spend their time on the island, thankful for the hospitality of generous residents. The island slowly drew to a lull while Naruto sat on his bed, devoid of his wedding clothes. So, Naruto-sama, how does it feel being married? Suiran inquired. I believe we can theorize how it feels for him based on his expression. The smile on his face hasn't left since he returned, Kimimaro replied as the others continued to sit around. Yahiko laughed. Yeah, he does look a little goofy, doesn't he? While the others made jokes, Pakura continued to watch, not sure what she should say. She wanted to offer Naruto congratulations but worried that her words wouldn't have their intended purpose. It was his day and she'd rather not mess it up. Unbeknownst to her, Kurama had his eye on her, watching the mixture of emotions ranging across her face before he snorted. Alright, that's enough of your conversation. All of you go about your own business and leave the brat to his duties. Kurama ordered. Duties? What do? Oh, Dan said, swallowing nervously when he saw Kushina come through the door. Oh my, Suiran thought before hastily severing her connection to Naruto. The others quickly followed her and settled in their own places as well. Wolf scowled while Lamb tilted her head, the two quickly fading off. Morio grimaced and dismissed himself, which left only Kurama. The fox snorted and swiftly fell asleep, not in the mood to partake in voyeurism and human mating. Lemon to the end. Meanwhile, Naruto watched Kushina come through the door, holding a candle lamp. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki stood up off the bed and walked over to her. I keep thinking I'll wake up and find this all to be a dream. Ka-chan, you're now my wife. My beautiful wife, Naruto said, wrapping his arms around her. Kushina smiled. Yes, and you're my husband. I hope you're ready to put up with me because there's no backing out now, she answered. Yes, her husband. To Kushina's surprise, Naruto leaned forward and touched his forehead with hers. There's no putting up with you, Kushina. I love every part of you. Every single piece is perfect to me and, as your husband, I'll make sure I show you that every day, her son proclaimed. The redhead wrapped one of her arms around his neck. Your tongue's gotten real cheeky as of late. However, I love that about you, Naruto. However, before tonight's over I'm gonna make sure your tongue's found another purpose, his mother said, making Naruto widen his eyes as she touched his chest. She then pushed him to the bed. Naruto fell but quickly leaned up, only to see Kushina leaning over him. The wedding shouldn't have been this long. Nearly a year and 4 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, 4 hours, 10 minutes, and 20 seconds. That's how long I've waited and I'm sure you waited just as long as I did, Kushina whispered, tracing her finger over his chest. Naruto stilled when he felt the fiery thrill of his mother's touch. Her finger ran over his body. Yeah, he said, staring at her while she gazed upon him. Now, the waiting is over. I want you, Naruto, my son, my husband, my lover. I want you so badly. And, I don't want you once, twice, or even 3 times. I want you all night, all day, and whatever you have left, Kushina said before she leaned into her son's ear. Quote. I want you to ravish me, Kushina said, her voice laced with sweet honey. Before she could even prepare herself, Kushina found her body pinned to the bed. Naruto towered over her while she looked at him. Do you know how long I've waited? It was longer than that, he said, glaring down at her. His stare made her tremble with great desire, and her breath swiftly became hoarse. Don't tell me. Show me, my husband, Kushina challenged. A single breath expelling through his nostrils, Naruto lowered himself down and kissed Kushina, his mother, his wife. She squirmed in delight, her body trembling like pure lightning rushing from head to toe. MMMMMNGH. Kushina moaned. Her son's lips were hot, dipped in lust and passion. His hard body lay against hers, allowing her own flesh to memorize every muscle in every spot. His strength kept her pinned beneath him, and she felt the power within it. For over a year that power had been kept in check, and now it was being hungrily released upon her. Kushina reciprocated his passion, desperate for more of her son, her husband. She cupped his cheeks while his fingers moved through her hair. Every strike of their lips fueled the growing sensual thrill. The forbidden ecstasy in their bedroom only escalated with fervor. One of Kushina's hands grabbed her son's hair while the other roamed the rest of his body. Her lower body quivered in delight before Naruto pulled away from her. She looked at him, her mind in a deep haze and her eyes fluttering. Kushina could hardly brace herself when he kissed her again, this time his tongue striking wonderfully against hers. MMMMNNGHG. Oh God. Just his lips feel so good. I might come just from kissing, Kushina thought. Too long had she gone without sexual relief, the touch of her son. Some days were more agonizing than others, but now she remembered none of them. She just remembered one touch after the other, one caress after another. It was amazing. With a smack of their lips, Naruto and Kushina panted. They looked upon each other, their faces disheveled from their actions. You're so beautiful, Kushina, Naruto said, making the redhead's face turn just as red as her hair. MNGH. Why yes, Sochi, that feels so good. Keep going, Kushina begged. Naruto didn't even nod. He simply laid down and claimed her lips for a 3rd time. He would simply never tire of kissing her. Chapter 90. KG. Quote. What greater thing is there for 2 human souls than to feel that they are joined to strengthen each other, to be at one with each other in silent unspeakable memories. By George Eliot. So, who's going in there 'cause I sure as hell ain't it. Tayuya said, staring at the clan compound with a grimace. Fuka, Gurren, Kamachi, Riza, and she also looked up, each carrying a tray of food and water. The members of the Uzumaki family had, happily, vacated the premises at the suggestion of Yura and Yuri. As many knew, things were likely to get heated at the compound and no one wanted to be around for the honeymoon. While it was irritating, everyone decided to honor Naruto and Kushina's marriage, believing the matter to take, at most, a day. It was only when Komachi returned, a heavy blush on her face, did they realize that perhaps the celibacy between Naruto and Kushina had gone on for too long. It was after the second day that someone wondered if they should give them food, lest the two of them literally fuck themselves to death. The only problem was, none of them were willing to ascend the hill to the compound and figure out if they could go in there and be safe from any traumatizing stimulations. Surely they should be finished by now, right? She inquired. Gurren snorted. Well, we can't just wait out here to find out. Do we really need to do this? Both of them can cook. I love our family, but there are some things I don't need to see or know, the crystal wielder exclaimed. I would like to not go, Komachi said meekly. The ex-Anbu still remembered the first time. She remembered being stunned into silence when she heard Kushina's vibrant, lust-filled screams. Her ears never forgot the vigorous slaps of flesh against flesh. If that had been covered in her training, then she didn't remember going over it, and she was kinda happy she didn't. The members of the Uzumaki clan continued to stand there, looking at each other as if daring someone to make the sacrifice and check on the safety of their patriarch and matriarch. Unfortunately, no one was brave enough. It seemed so funny that none of the Hyuga, Uchiha, or Hinoken team members were to be found. Such much for a united family front. Are you guys still standing there? Yuri asked, making the others tremble. They turned their heads and noticed the Sanbi Jinchuriki standing behind them. Well, why don't you go then? Tayuya said while Yuri raised an eyebrow. She then looked up at the compound and shrugged. Alright, she said as she grabbed the tray for Tayuya, grinning when she saw her cousin's stunned face. The others watched as she ascended the hill and approached the compound. Too stunned to say a word, they could only watch the second youngest Uzumaki disappear over the hill. Are we not going to stop her? Komachi asked. Unfortunately, no one was able to give her a proper answer. In the meantime, Yuri approached the compound with her tray of food and water. Honestly, what was wrong with the members of her family? Was she the only one who had sex in this family? Surely, it wasn't that big a deal. After all, she was already planning to go for longer than this for her honeymoon. Yuri was going to make sure she lasted longer than Kushina. The Sanbi Jinchuriki hadn't forgotten how Naruto teased her back in that frozen domain. He whispered in her ear the idea of children. She still remembered the fire that exploded within her, and she remembered how weak her legs got when he kissed her. How she cursed his celibacy. She wouldn't have cared about getting fucked in the cold if that desire could be fulfilled. She was going to make him rue the day he messed with her. No one messed with Uzumaki Yuri and got away with it. Once Yuri approached the gardens, she opened the sliding door. Surprisingly, everything seemed so quiet. Yet, her nostrils flared, the intense smell of sex coming through. When she focused her hearing, she chuckled when she still heard the sound of Naruto and Kushina fucking behind their room door. Not that I care about how you humans procreate, but is this something normal? How long does this make it? Sanbi inquired. He'd been sleeping for the past few days given that there was nothing to do. Oh, he enjoyed the peace, but knowing that his brother's partner was still engaged in sexual productivity astounded the crab turtle. 2 days if Tayuya and the others had it right. Also, I dunno if it's normal or not. Maybe a stronger Uzumaki life force brings a stronger Uzumaki libido. Whatever it is, I'm gonna take full advantage of it. Yuri explained, which made Isobu roll his exposed eye. How did he go from Yagura to this? I heard that, Yuri replied, smiling when she heard Isobu gruffly groan. The Sanbi swiftly quieted down while Yuri made her way up the stairs, the thumps and thrusts getting louder and louder. Despite herself, a blush appeared on her face until she knocked on the door. Naruto ni, Kushina-san, I don't wanna interrupt the honeymoon and all, but I think you guys should at least get something to eat. Also, the rest of the family would like you to take a break as well. We're kinda tired of sleeping outside, Yuri said patiently. Of the many things Yuri was expecting, the opening of the door wasn't one of them. A heavy blush appeared on her face when she saw Kushina's disheveled face. Her red hair was sprawled over her face. Sweat poured from her naked body in droves, which made Yuri's throat go dry. The younger redhead watched the older one's legs tremble, and though she couldn't see Naruto, she could tell his handiwork hadn't ceased as Kushina's body continued to jerk. Oh, sorry about that. Why Yuri? Thanks for the food. Sochi and I will be done in 001H who. NNGHGHGHGHGH, TTT2 ho, Munkagig, FFF5e. Kushina screamed as Yuri swallowed slowly, stunned when she saw Kushina pulled back into the room, the sound of lips being smacked, both upper and lower. Yuri bit her lip and her hands trembled. We'll be done by the end of the day, Yuri-chan. Thanks. Naruto said, boldly stepping out of the room in his naked glory. Yuri's voice quickly left her as she marveled at his toned form. His cock was splendid, standing proudly in front of her. Naruto followed her gaze and chuckled. He grabbed the tray from her and leaned into her ear. And you won't have to wait long. You're next, he whispered, making her utterly shiver. Before she could even retort, the youngest redhead saw the door close in front of her, a wink from her lover being left with her. Yuri stood in front of the door bewildered before she blankly stepped away. The harsh thrusts continued and so did the sounds of utter pleasure. She left the compound and descended the stairs. Surprisingly, the rest of her family was still there. She must have worn her heart on her sleeve this time because they could easily tell that something was wrong. What happened? Riza asked, noticing that Yuri returned very much the same as Komachi. However, unlike their cousin, her expression was much more enthusiastic. Hell, some might even say her head was in the clouds. As if registering the question, Yuri cleared her throat. They'll be done by the end of the day, Yuri claimed. The end of the day? She exclaimed. Gurren pinched the bridge of her nose while Fuka laughed, clearly more amused by the idea than anyone else. If you have any complaints, you can go up there. As for me, I need to go somewhere, Yuri said as she pushed past the members of her family and walked down the open road. She really needed to find some alone time right now in the worst way. The others watched her leave and cleared their throats. So, what should we do for the day? Komachi asked. Suddenly, Riza smiled which made Tayuya grimace. Fucking damn it, she huffed before she was dragged away by her mother to undertake more sealing jutsu practice. The others quickly followed after her while Fuka leaned into Gurren's ear. Do you think Katetsu-san will do that to you? She inquired. Fuka laughed when she dodged a sharp pillar of crystal that erupted beneath her feet. Honestly, some people just couldn't take a joke. Was she the only one who found this whole situation funny? Thankfully, Naruto indeed kept his word. By the end of the day, the others were allowed to move back into the compound. However, expressions ranged from suspicion and amusement to confusion and disbelief. The reason was that Kushina had the widest after-sex smile on her face. She was positively glowing in the way that Gurren, Riza, and Fuka knew that a woman would. They also noticed that she seemed perfectly at home sitting on the couch. Think you two lovebirds can keep your paws off each other for a few hours? Tayuya inquired, raising an eyebrow as if she knew the answer to her own question. Naruto rubbed the back of his head while Kushina's smile brightened. How long is a few hours? She asked. Oh, for fuck's sake. I hate this family, the former kunoichi of Orochimaru growled as she stomped up the stairs. Yura blushed while Yuri nudged Naruto with her elbow. Don't think you'll be able to convince them so easily when it's my turn, she whispered, making Naruto grin. He appreciated the challenge, and Kushina felt she'd have to rein in those two. Of course, the Uzumaki matriarch knew that they had to pause their passion, at least momentarily. Things were still very tense and the nations had been kind enough to take a brief reprieve to allow them their time together. Unfortunately, Naruto would be scheduled to head into another cage summit as the mediator in the Land of Stone. Meanwhile, Kushina would be monitoring the earth, continuing to look for this person who attached Sasuke, Kakashi, Yuna, and Rin. There was also the Akatsuki as well. Alright, I think we've all gotten the point across. Go back to your rooms and enjoy your free time. Yukimaru-kun, when you have a moment tomorrow, could you go to the Uchiha clan and tell them I'd like to meet with them? We'll have to work harder to make sure that we make our land a success. Since we don't have income from a village anymore, we'll have to work hard to supply ourselves. We've also been given a monumental task. Be careful wherever you go, these are very uncertain times, Kushina said while the others agreed. What would you have us do? She asked. Rather than answer, Kushina turned to Naruto for his decision. All eyes turned to him for instruction, and to say that Naruto felt a little self-conscious was an understatement. Nevertheless, he didn't waver in front of the pressure. We will continue as we've always done. The nation's slowly returning. Tsunade Bachan even mentioned that in 5 or 6 years, things will have returned to normal. However, that's not exactly a good thing. Obito's made it clear that the matter with the Akatsuki isn't finished. I don't know what he's got planned, but if Madara was willing to create the 4th Great Shinobi War in an attempt to gain Kurama from me, Isobu from Yuri, and the Hachibi from Old Man Kurabi, then I imagine they'll come up with a plan somehow. For Kakashi-sensei and Rin's sakes, if you can then capture Obito, should encounter him. If not, then know that I won't hold it against you, Naruto answered. The Uzumaki quickly nodded while Naruto exhaled. Plus, since we're our own force now, I'll have to come up with a measure for Yukimaru, Hanabi, and many of the other young children that have migrated into the land of eddies. That's a workload that I can't drop on Haku as the Whirlpool Daimyo, Naruto replied. You can leave that to me. Having worked with Raikage-sama for many years, I had the opportunity to delve into matters like this. At the least, I can lighten the workload while you're undertaking your mediator duties. All I ask is that I be kept abreast of the activities happening in Kumogakure. While I don't regret my time with my family, I was still born in the village. I would like to make sure that it continues to stand, she answered. Naruto and the others agreed. Following that, talks continued until everyone decided to do their own thing. Some practiced their sealing jutsu and others entered the clan courtyard, practicing or teaching the arts of taijutsu, ninjutsu, or genjutsu. The house ran late until things quieted down. Naruto fell asleep with Kushina in his arms, though not before one last night of slow, tender, quiet, love-making. The house grew quiet soon after. Sasuke wasn't sure what he was supposed to do with Yuna. Ever since their conversation 7 months ago, she hadn't brought up what they spoke about on that boat before they were attacked. The Uchiha hadn't brought it up either, and yet that simply didn't stop the strange occurrences that happened regarding his mother. Every situation only made him desire her more. The Uchiha was hopelessly captivated with his mother. It especially didn't help when he saw Naruto's wedding. Even Sasuke had to admit that, despite the usual grandeur of the affair, Kushina seemed so utterly happy with Naruto by her side. Yet, Sasuke never had more than a pleasant conversation with his mother. Some might call him emotionally stunted, broody, unkind, aloof, and many other negative adjectives, but a cheater he wasn't. Well, outside of shinobi duties, he had more than enough self-control and discipline to not jeopardize his relationship with Yuna on something that might not even be there. Even then, he was perfectly happy with Yuna. The Uchiha heir always assumed it'd be years before he even thought of rebuilding his clan. Yet, Naruto had given him the love of his life. Of course, they had a few arguments here and there, but Sasuke desired almost none other to stand at his side. The Uchiha frowned as he found himself sitting in the dining room, a hot cup of water in his hand. He supposed he should count himself lucky that Konoha survived the incident with Jashin. That left him with all of their compound and the niceties that came with it, like cups, chairs, tables, and beds. This hot water was all they had to drink as of late, aside from the things hastily put together for his best friend's wedding a few days ago. What are you doing, sitting here by yourself? The young, male Uchiha turned his head and noticed the object of his many frustrations come through the door. His mother smiled, wearing a dress that hardly looked better than bedsheets wrapped around her form. Unable to help himself, the Uchiha's eyes lingered on her for more than what should be necessary, and Makoto noticed. Yet, she couldn't find it in herself to stop him. She appreciated the gaze, even if she didn't know it herself. Finally, Sasuke, realizing what he was doing, managed to tear his gaze away. Thinking, or maybe enjoying the brief vacation. We've been busy the last few months, Sasuke said. Makoto cleared her throat, realizing that she'd been in something of a daze herself. She took off her shoes and stepped into the house. Yes, it's been a while since we've been given a time like this. Though, I think we'll be having more fun in the future when you and Yuna decide to get married. Take it from me, it's a fulfilling time, Makoto said, taking a seat across the table from her son. Sasuke grunted, looking at his cup as if his thoughts were far away. Makoto chuckled, until the room fell into something of an awkward silence. She didn't like it. At least, of all people, her sons should be the one she was most comfortable with. Yet, Every seemingly accidental situation made her chest flutter. It had to be Sasuke because there was the occasional mishap with Itachi and she never felt that way. Hell, Makoto actually tried a few dates over the months. Surely, it had to be just a repression of male attention that made her act this way. Yet, it simply wasn't the same. Nothing flowed as naturally as it did with Sasuke. Makoto even wondered if she should just remain single. There was no way she could follow in Kushina's steps. You know, I've tried to get Itachi to get married, but he stubbornly refuses, Makoto said, tapping her finger on the table. I doubt many women would be willing to put up with Nisan, Sasuke answered. After all, even if Sasuke had forgiven Itachi of the things he'd done, he knew that those matters still plagued his brother's mind. Sometimes, Sasuke would wake up in the middle of the night and find Itachi just sitting on the porch, staring at the moon. Sasuke never spoke with Itachi about it, but he'd seen him crying on a couple of occasions. Perhaps, but companionship is the only true antidote to loneliness, Makoto wisely stated. Sasuke looked at her and noticed her giving him a knowing look. The male Uchiha quickly understood that his mother had seen the same things plaguing Itachi as well. Does that include you as well? Sasuke asked before he could stop himself. Makoto widened her eyes, a sudden flush of flattering unease moving through her. She cleared her throat and chuckled, toying with her hair while gazing into her son's eyes. I think that includes everyone most days, she answered rather weakly while Sasuke hummed. If there was one thing he noticed about himself, he liked the way a woman played with her hair. Even before Yuna and Makoto, he'd seen more than a few girls back in the academy do it. While he didn't care for pursuing romantic interests, his eyes couldn't deny the attraction and the appeal. He'd say that even Sakura was something nice to look at despite her previous obsession with him. Karen, a little less so. Once again, the table settled into silence, neither sure what they should be talking about. Well, there was something to talk about, and both knew it. It hung in front of them like a dangling carrot, just waiting there for one or the other to grab hold of it. Yet, neither took the bait. And even so, the silence felt nice as well, giving each other the opportunities to sneak glances when the other wasn't looking. Ka-san, whatever Sasuke was going to say quickly paused when there came a knock on the door. The two Uchiha stilled for a moment before another knock on the door came. Sasuke finished his water and stood up. He walked over to the door and opened it, becoming surprised when he saw Yukimaru there. Good morning, Sasuke-san. I hope I'm not bothering you, Yukimaru said, a bright and welcoming smile on his face. Sasuke glanced back at his mother. No, I suppose you aren't. What are you doing here? The Uchiha asked, hoping his response didn't sound as cold as he meant it to. Given his rather cold response, Yukimaru was sure he had indeed interrupted something but figured it was best to complete his mission as soon as possible. Naruto-ni and Kushina-san wanted you and Makoto-san to come to the Uzumaki compound, Yukimaru said. At the mention of her best friend's name, Makoto stood up and approached the door. Is there a problem? She asked. I wasn't told. But I think it has to do with our new roles. Since Kakashi-san and Yugao-san returned to Konoha, I think Naruto-ni wants to take stock of the situation, Yukimaru replied. Sasuke slowly nodded. Yes, it had now sunk in that the Uzumaki, Uchiha, and Hyuga were no longer affiliated with any village. Rather, they were an entire entity to themselves. As such, Hinoken was disbanded with Kakashi and Yugao heading back to Konoha, at least for the time being. Neither Naruto nor Kushina forced Kakashi and Yugao to choose where to live. Their hearts rested in Konoha and no one would force them to consider otherwise. We'll be there soon then. Thank you, Yukimaru-kun, Makoto said, smiling. Receiving her acknowledgement, Yukimaru nodded and waved them goodbye, quickly running away while Sasuke closed the door. He felt his mother touch his shoulder. Well, we better not keep them waiting, she said as she turned around. Given that both were dressed already, they didn't need much before they made their way out of the compound. A trail connected the Uchiha, Uzumaki, and Hyuga compounds, providing each with more than ample space for privacy, but close enough to be sure that a connection amongst the three clans was prevalent. Sasuke and Makoto walked amongst the fresh trees and cloudy air. The wind blew gentle breezes upon them until they came into the Uzumaki compound. Sasuke knocked on the door and Gurren answered. That was quick. You could have taken at least another hour or so, she said as she opened the door. I believe it's best to practice good habits unless we all end up like Kakashi one day, Makoto replied, laughing as she took off her shoes again and stepped inside with Sasuke. Gurren grunted. You'd have to try pretty hard to get to that point. Either way, Naruto and Kushina are waiting for you guys in the meeting room. No doubt Yukimaru's spreading the word to Hiashi and Hizashi. I gotta go meet with the contractors and other builders down on the other parts of the island. Fuka and Riza are settling up the defensive ceiling array, and Yuya, Gurren paused before she finally rolled her eyes. We're busy. Sorry, I gotta go, Gurren said as she slipped by Sasuke and Makoto. She then walked off in a hurry. The two Uchiha watched her go before returning to the open door. It seems our peaceful times are about to come to an end, Makoto commented. Sasuke grunted and led her inside. Having been here numerous times, the two already knew where to go. They traversed the various halls of the compound until they came to the meeting room. Makoto knocked on the door. Enter. Hearing Naruto's voice, Sasuke opened the sliding door. As expected, Naruto and Kushina sat in the room, the latter sitting a few inches behind her husband. When Makoto and Kushina eyed each other, the former couldn't resist a smile coming across her face. Her best friend was absolutely glowing. One would have to be blind to not see the elation radiating from her visage. Good morning, Kushina. I'll admit, I had not expected your honeymoon to end so quickly, Makoto joked. True to form, Naruto blushed while Kushina simply continued to smile. Oh, it hasn't ended. We've just paused it for now. It certainly wouldn't do to keep the entire compound to ourselves for too long. Don't worry, I know my husband will make it up to me, Kushina said, grinning blissfully. Sasuke raised an eyebrow, snorting when he saw his best friend's goofy grin. Was he going to turn into that when it was his turn? He wondered if his mother had worn that expression when she married his father. Please don't tell me your private affairs. I know enough about you as it is. What did you call us here for? Sasuke questioned rather impatiently. Makoto scolded her son while Naruto offered his best friend a seat. And what do you have to do that's got you in such a rush? Knowing you, you were sitting at home thinking about nothing away. You can take a few minutes to socialize, Naruto joked. Sasuke scowled before he grunted and took a seat. Makoto sat behind her son. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki gained something of a smirk on his face before his expression turned serious. It's about what we're going to do moving forward, Sasuke. I'll be heading to Iwagakure for another Cage Summit. I want to discuss the operations for the rest of the construction. It's a matter that requires the heads of each clan, Naruto answered. Sasuke glanced at his friend only a moment, his expression softening upon when the matter was presented. He just nodded and opted to wait. Of course, that didn't stop Kushina and Makoto from trading friendly stories with each other until another knock on the door came. Once invited in, Naruto, Kushina, Sasuke, and Makoto noticed Hiashi and Hizashi come through the door. Yo, Hiashi, Naruto greeted, offering a friendly wave while the Hyuga clan head nodded. Greetings, Naruto. I admit that when Yukimaru approached our gates, I found myself confused when he said you requested our presence. Surely your festivities haven't ended so quickly, Hiashi stated, taking a seat with his brother. If Naruto hadn't known Hiashi for a number of months, he would have sworn that he was being made fun of. It didn't help when he heard his mother snicker behind him. The Hyuga clan recently contracted with some fishermen. We'd be more than happy to supply the Uzumaki with a few boxes of oysters. I've heard that they work well with. I don't need oysters. I'm fine, Naruto readily answered, slamming his hands on the floor mat. Hiashi and Hizashi remained stoic for only a moment before smiles came to their faces. Strangely, even Sasuke couldn't remain impartial to the misery caused to Naruto. I see. Then I believe we need not discuss the matter further. So, what have you called us for? Hiashi questioned. Finding a moment to collect himself, Naruto inhaled and exhaled slowly. I've already given Sasuke a gist of what we're going to talk about. It's been a few months and the nations have just begun getting back to some semblance of normalcy. It's time for Uzushio to begin structuring itself as well, especially if we're to be taken seriously as a mediator between the nations, and regarding that, it'll also be a means to split what forces we have, especially since the Akatsuki were still considered a threat. Not to mention Danzo is still out there. While his work has been pushed to a halt, it won't take him long to get back into his old habits, if he hasn't already. Sasuke, you and I both know the damage someone like Danzo can put out if we don't take care of him. We're fortunate that the nations are working together for now, but I've got no idea how long that will last. I want to bring him down before he stretches his hand anywhere else. He's a guy who even Orochimaru served under after all, the blonde remarked, drawing the stern gazes of everyone. I see this will not be a casual discussion, Hisashi claimed. Naruto leaned back and scratched his cheek. Trust me, I don't like having the discussion either, but it's not like the nations went through all this work to establish this land as a world mediator if we don't have talks like this. Then there's also the Akatsuki and Obito. No one knows where the Biju have gone, but Kakashi-sensei's old teammate still wants to war against the world despite what we've all experienced. He controlled Kurama to attack Konoha, we'd be stupid to think he wouldn't be able to do it to the other Biju, he spoke, taking notice of the critical gazes of the others. You believe the Akatsuki would seek to capture the Biju a second time? Hisashi inquired. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I do. Even Kurama thinks so. And yet, there's also the person who attacked Sasuke, Kakashi-sensei, Yuna, and Rin. Months have passed and we haven't found anything. Kagura hasn't mentioned anything regarding the moon and we still have no way to get up there. Between all these incidents, I prefer a proactive approach. Before I leave, I'll be taking Yuri, Yura, and Yukimaru with me. Hisashi, I'd like Hanabi to also come with us, Naruto claimed. The Hyuga clan leader stared at his friend, his expressions measured and even. You wish to acclimate them all to a highly political environment, Hisashi stated. Suffice it to say, Naruto felt a little sheepish at this. Nevertheless, he nodded. Yeah, for as long as these things happen, I'd like to take everyone at least once or twice. It'll get everyone familiar with a political landscape. Trust me, even after Ka-chan taught me what she did, I still think politics are stupid and a waste of time. It's a field of expertise that all leaders must have. And given what we do, we'll be in that environment a lot. It's better to learn it now, with everyone else as new to it as we are, Naruto claimed. Hisashi and Hisashi looked at each other, neither finding the means to deny what Naruto said. While Hisashi had been training Hanabi to become politically adept, it had always taken something of secondary importance to her career as a kunoichi. Now that they were a separate entity, matters like this would have to be handled carefully. I see. You've certainly thought about this. Quite extensively, Makoto mentioned. Well, I represent our clan in this land. I can't be the same brat as always. Besides, I can't drag my wife's name through the mud, can I? Naruto asked. And Naruto. Kushina stammered, enjoying the acknowledgement, yet still not so used to the forwardness of his words. Of course, that didn't stop the smile from spreading across her face. The others watched in amusement before the conversation swiftly turned serious. While I do agree with your sentiments, Uzumaki Naruto, I believe we must also consider the needs of our land as well. Buildings have only just now been allowed to be reconstructed, we also must head into a proper supply of income. While many of you boast portions of the Shinigami's might, the vast majority have not had such a privilege. It will be some time before we've added proper materials to our arsenal. The production costs of kunai, shuriken, and even proper shinobi attire will take more time, Hisashi responded. The same bodes true of our enemies as well. It will take them time to prepare these things as well. Every single project that was either finished or ongoing, has been destroyed upon the Earth's creation. Naruto-sama, would it not be best to allocate our resources to preparing the village? Hisashi questioned. Naruto exhaled slowly. Yeah, that's why I was planning to leave Ka-chan and Hisashi to handle the matters here while I'm gone. I suppose I could leave a few clones behind to help out. I've already had them going across the land of eddies, speeding up whatever process I could. I'm just looking for a time to dispel them. The exhaustion is gonna hit me at some point, Naruto mentioned. You don't need to do that. I have enough Honsho to make up a difference like that. Focus your energies on the Cage Summit. In the meantime, I'll have Shi and Kamachi help me manage the construction here. While we do that, I can monitor what I can of the elemental nations for any Otsutsuki, Kushina added in. Sasuke, who'd been relatively silent, finally spoke. If that's the case, then it's all the more reason why some of us should head out. We can keep a watchful eye for any Otsutsuki as well. I'll assemble a team and track down the whereabouts of Danzo and the Akatsuki. If they have something to do with the Biju, it'd be best to have another Sharingan to combat them. I could also enlist the aid of shinobi from the other nations, Sasuke said. Unfortunately, his thought was interrupted when his mother placed a hand on his shoulder. Perhaps we should wait for matters to settle before we begin enlisting aid from others. I agree with Sasuke's plan nonetheless, Makoto expressed. Naruto bit his lip a little bit before he cleared his throat. Just make sure you haven't put a lot on your plate. Dealing with just one of those matters is enough. In fact, Hazashi, think you can put together a team that could investigate anything related to Danzo. That'll free Sasuke to pursue the Akatsuki, Naruto suggested. Hiashi hummed. It is possible. However, we have yet to discuss a proper schedule of pay for matters such as this. I believe we are not letting our forces risk their lives for nothing, Hazashi commented. Kushina cleared her throat. Yes, that is a problem that much of the world still hasn't figured out. Tell you what, I'll have she create a ledger of sorts. Those who undertake the assignment will be among the first to be properly paid once a stable circulation of funds has been gathered. I believe that is the best we can do with the situation we've been offered, Naruto's new wife stated. I believe that is all we can hope for given the circumstances. So what would be next on the agenda? Hazashi asked. Naruto closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. He then opened his eyes. Soon enough the others were stunned when they saw long-past warriors from their clans, each of them more seasoned than the last. Simple, in order to remain the mediator, we're gonna need strength, and we're gonna begin refining each of our clan techniques, building even further on what's past. Forgotten knowledge, ancient techniques, old learnings, we're gonna make use of all of them. The blonde claimed, a sharp grin on his face. Obito simply didn't understand it. The once powerful, and feared terrorist organization, Akatsuki, comprised of numerous S-rank shinobi had been reduced to less than half its strength. The only ones left of the Akatsuki were himself, Kisame, Zetsu, and the regent. The Biju were gone, scattered to who knows where. Two of them had grown even more powerful inside their Jinchuriki hosts, and the Eye of the Moon plan lay in ruins as his and Madara's manipulations were brought before Nagato, courtesy of Uzumaki Naruto. And then, Rin, the object of his fierce love, was now alive. Uzumaki Naruto, who would have thought that you would be such a pain later in life? I should have taken the opportunity to kill you when I captured you from Minato-sensei on that night. Now, I am forced to pay for that mistake. Yet, I have no idea of how to proceed, Obito thought to himself. Suffice it to say, the Akatsuki were currently at their lowest point. Hated by nearly every nation and their goals laid before the Akatsuki, no nation would house them even momentarily. In fact, Obito feared that if anyone spotted them, word would travel quickly. He'd already had to force at least 10 people under a genjutsu to forget their existence. I must admit, I've never seen you wear such a frustrated expression. We're really at the bottom of the barrel right now, aren't we? Kisame questioned, glancing at the regent sitting on a tree, a bird landing on his arm. Though the intermission is long, the curtain shall call once all the audience has gathered, the regent said, scratching the bird's neck while the Zetsu remained silent. However, frustration lay upon their faces as well. With Onoki's granddaughter taking the reins as the new Tsuchikage, it became clear that the regent's agreement fell through. And what is that supposed to mean? You have been leading us to ridiculous locations while you spout off your insane drivel. Why have you brought us here? Black Zetsu inquired. With hardly a plan to work through, the regent suggested that they follow him to someone who'd make an excellent member of the Akatsuki. Yet, they had been walking for months now with hardly an end in sight. The regent said nothing, simply continuing to look through the holes in his mask at the bright sun. It is unusual. Why have we stopped here? White Zetsu inquired. As soon as that question was asked, the group of four suddenly picked up on an unfamiliar presence. From the forests that had been their home for the past few days, Obito spotted a figure moving through the trees and the overgrowth. Most of this figure's head was bald, save for the long line of black hair that fell behind his back. If not for such things, Obito might have mistook him for a monk. Obito's eyes narrowed. Every one of the Akatsuki members could tell there was something off about the man from the look in his eyes. It was a look that many of them weren't content with. That look considered them at best to be insects, void of all feelings of empathy or even humanity in general. Even Kisame lost his grin, tightening his grip on Samahata. As the man drew closer, his dark eyes glanced at the Zetsu momentarily. He considered them carefully before his eyes turned to the regent. He hated having to look up, especially at inferior creatures. Yet, there was something about that masked individual that separated him from the other wastes. Finally, the regent released the bird from his arm. So the second act begins, the regent claimed, shifting his gaze toward the man who suddenly appeared before them. This is who we waited for. He doesn't seem like much. A guppy on the thin side, I'd say, Kisame said, his confidence not exactly matching up with his statement. As much as it irritated him, his fingers kept twitching and Samahata kept squirming. Yet, he didn't know why. The man ignored Kisame and turned to the regent. You deserve congratulations. You have managed to fall under my gaze. That's not an easy thing to do. Now, what would the Akatsuki have to do with me? The man asked. Hey, a rather presumptuous one, isn't he? Kisame inquired. The regent fell from the tree and landed on the ground. Is not a play better when more performers are set upon the glorious stage? Surely, you do not intend to hide away after experiencing the changes that have come upon this world, the regent claimed. The man's expression never changed. He looked at Obito and then looked at Zetsu. Uzumaki Naruto, the man who contracted with a god. I have heard of him. It is impossible not to. However, I do not need your help dealing with someone like him. Power used by an uncultured body is a waste. For having made it this far, I will allow you to leave with your lives, the man said. Oh, will you? And what if I don't allow you to leave? Kisame threatened, turning Samahata toward the unknown man who came to them. Unexpectedly, the man utterly ignored Kisame. Instead, his gaze continued to settle on the regent, his gaze still measured. However, that gaze belied the complexity of his thoughts. Looking at the regent, he saw an enigma, a sense of nothing, a presence of nihilistic understanding. Even more mysterious, there wasn't a shred of chakra to be found in his body. That was something that should have been impossible, except for Uzumaki Naruto and those associated with him. The regent ceased Kisame's aggression and approached the mysterious man. And you covet the main stage, the grand arena where every actor shall move upon their predestined role. Could it not be possible that Otsutsuki Shibai happened upon one such actor and, being full of covetousness, achieved the very precipice of the Otsutsuki will? Do you not wish to follow? Do you not wish to take the role of lead actor for yourself? For even you know, with such a role, you will knock others off their stage, even those like royalty, the regent claimed. Immediately, the man's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The man asked suspiciously. The other Akatsuki members eyed the conversation between the two carefully. Zetsu, more than anyone, felt the rising unease moving through them. They didn't like this man, there was just a method to his demeanor that exuded distrust and sickening ambition, all covered up in an expression of indifference. Behind his mask, the regent smiled. What is a name but a mark to be left in the annals of history? Names are best left to those who wish to either be left as a stamp upon this higher plane or, to dictate the stamps of others. What would that make you? The regent asked. The man remained silent for a long period. Thoughts on what to do with the information presented to him prevailed constantly. He then turned his gaze toward Zetsu, Kisame, and then Obito. Finally, he gave his answer. Jigen, the man said, his emotionless eyes suddenly hardening. Meanwhile, the regent grinned behind his mask, accepting the name with a nod. Far back in Konoha, Yugao closed a book that she'd been reading. Placing it on her table, she exhaled. Here, in her lonely apartment, she wondered how the rest of her former teammates were doing over in Uzushio. She and Kakashi had returned to Konoha and Yugao was left wondering if she made the right decision. Konoha had always been her home and the others were more than understanding of her wants. For so many years, Yugao never thought about living in another village or under another authority figure. In fact, Yugao, when she was younger, always thought that shinobi who migrated to other nations were traitors to the village. She always reasoned that they simply never had the heart to serve in Konoha's best interests. Why would they leave if that were the case? However, she came to learn, very early on, that sometimes leaving meant serving the interests of the village as well. Itachi was a prime lesson regarding that. Now that the others were gone, Yugao found herself haunted by the memories of Hayate. It had been her friends that helped her deal with the loss of her lover. The action certainly helped as well. At least Kakashi had someone to talk to in Rin. She hadn't seen many of her friends given her time away. Yugao often thought about asking Naruto to revive Hayate but something just stopped her from doing so. The idea of losing Hayate again, whether to old age, disease, war, or something else, was just too much for her heart to bear. Even then, she wondered if he'd want to come back. Of course, she knew that he might, for he loved her, but, wherever he might end up, it might be better for him than in a world like this. Besides, maybe Yugao would see him again when it was her turn. Maybe I should walk around. Hokage-sama hasn't issued anything for Kakashi or me. Staying in here's a little too depressing, Yugao said as she got up and dressed herself. She then walked outside and entered the village. As expected, construction of the village was much easier than for the other nations because it had been spared Jashin's wrath. There were still numerous intricacies to work through, yet many anticipated the village returning to normal, and even improving in the coming years. Yugao walked through much of the village's western quadrant, absently waving to fellow Jonin and even Chunin. Yet, her heart still longed for her old team. She never thought she'd feel so alien in her own home. After a while, she found herself sitting on a bench while she watched children play. Ryo, for your thoughts. The former Anbu agent turned her head and blinked when she saw one of her friends, Kurenai, standing there, her belly getting notably bigger. Kurenai, what are you doing here? Moreover, alone, Yugao said. Kurenai smiled. The doctor still told me to get whatever exercise I can. I'm due any day now. Shikamaru fawns over me, getting me whatever I need. While I wish he hadn't picked up Asuma's smoking habit, I don't know where I'd be without him. I'm just blessed I was returned to pregnancy when the world was created. Now, knowing I'm about to have my own daughter, I thought I'd get a glimpse at what I'm in for. I then saw you. You look like you could use someone to talk to, Kurenai said. Yugao lightly laughed and sighed. She then turned her attention to the park. I don't know. It's just something stupid, she claimed. Now, it was Kurenai's turn to laugh. Yugao, it's no one's place to belittle someone else's concerns. If you have worries, then you should share them. I can't promise I have the answer, but I'll at least lend an ear. I wasn't doing anything anyway. This gives me the chance to rest my feet, the former teacher of Team 8 responded. Yugao leaned back on the bench, her critical eye watching the warm glow of motherhood shining on Kurenai's face. Did you come up with that line when you were teaching your students? The purple-haired Kunoichi asked, a knowing smirk on her face. The smile on Kurenai's face widened. I actually learned that in my, preparing for motherhood, sessions with the doctors. Is it working? The talented Genjutsu Kunoichi inquired. Yugao rolled her eyes. If I say no, will that get me out of this? She questioned. Unfortunately, Kurenai shook her head. I'm afraid not. I believe you're stuck with me and I have been working on my persuasion skills. And I'm currently on leave, so I have nothing to do. I can wait, Kurenai joked. Yugao inhaled and exhaled slowly. She looked up at the sky and shook her head slightly. I guess I'm feeling a little, team sick, Yugao mentioned. Upon these words, Kurenai looked at her friend almost like she knew what her friend was going through. Right, you were on a team that Hokage-sama sanctioned. A team composed of the village's most talented kenjutsu specialists. If I recall, it was you, Makoto-san, Kushina-san, Sasuke, Kakashi, and Naruto, Kurenai said. Yugao quickly noticed that her friend said the latter's name a little, evenly as compared to the others. Of course, it didn't take much thinking to imagine why. You have a problem with him? Yugao asked, taking a measured tone. As much as she liked Kushina, Yugao wouldn't allow anyone to speak badly of Naruto, not after everything he'd done and everything they'd experienced. Kurenai laughed and slowly shook her head. I think problem is the wrong word. Many in Konoha wonder if we're headed back to the Warring States period with the Uchiha and Hyuga clans, two of the most prominent clans in Konoha's history, separating from the village and joining the Uzumaki. It was only further suspected when it was revealed that the Hyuga enacted a blood pact with the Uzumaki, effectively making them one clan. I guess, I never wanted Hinata to be in a position where she'd have to choose between the village and her family. I respect her choice, and I'm glad she chose a proper middle ground, but I just wish she wouldn't have been put in such a position in the first place. And, wait a minute, we're supposed to be talking about you. How did we suddenly talk about me? Kurenai inquired, faking indignation. Yugao laughed. Years of proper Anbu agent sessions on information gathering. You'd be surprised what I could get out of you if I really tried, she claimed, which only made her friend look at her sternly. Finally, the former Anbu agent held up her hands and nodded. I miss the others. I wonder if I made the right decision to stay in Konoha. I never thought about living, or serving, anywhere else, and I just miss the others. Our coordination training was some of the best times I ever had, and they helped me move on from Hayate. Now that they're gone, I just find myself a little out of sorts, Yugao said. For herself, Kurenai felt a little out of her depth. She hadn't been expecting something like that, even though that was something that almost every team went through, Genin more than most. Hell, Hinata, Hiba, and Shino had stayed teammates for much longer than teams ought to stay for. Once they became Chunin, shinobi tended to branch out into their respective field careers, gaining new teammates and jobs every so often. I see. It is always hard when friends and family migrate to another nation. If you wish to give it time, I believe you will meet new teammates and forge bonds just as strong with them. However, I recommend that you not make the decision hastily. Many shinobi migrate to other nations, and even some of ours have gone there. I heard that Kotetsu and Izumo have found a home in the land of eddies, so it's not uncommon. Besides, this situation regarding the Uzumaki is still very much unusual for many of us. There has been talk of embassies being set up in the land of eddies for each nation, with their representatives living there. If you apply, I'm sure you could be a part of it. Just know that what you're feeling isn't uncommon, Kurenai said. Yugao sighed again. I know. But just because we feel something doesn't mean it's right. Like, I still don't really agree with Naruto and Kushina's marriage, but it's their own choice and I respect their decision. You also gave me a good idea, but I'm not really the emissary type. I'm a soldier. I take orders and complete mission objectives. I don't really enjoy all the politics associated with it, Yugao answered. Kurenai shrugged. Name someone who does. However, if that doesn't appeal to you, then I suggest you wait a few years. If you still feel this way, then perhaps you have just grown fond of other places. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I actually thought of moving to Suna once, Kurenai said. Yugao faltered. Excuse me. The former sensei of Team 8 laughed at the bewildered expression on her friend's face. Yeah, Asuma wasn't my first romantic interest, I'll have you know. A nice guy from Suna visited the village one day and I was ordered to show him around. He was really sweet, charming, and a great listener. He stayed in the village for a few months and I got to know him better. When he was ordered to leave, he asked me to come with him, she said. Yugao stiffened. What? You never told us this. Kurenai shrugged her shoulders. Well, I figured if I talked about it, it might stir up some old feelings and my thoughts would lead me to some things. Either way, as you can see, I didn't go and he left. I often wondered how my life would change if I went. Life's too short for regrets, Yugao. Use your best judgment and do what's right, even if it doesn't make sense to you, Kurenai said. Yugao remained silent for a moment before she snorted. Book quotes. Really? She asked. Quote. Blame Asuma. He was bad at shogi, but a master at reciting literature. You would think it looking at him the first time. Though, I believe the message remains clear. If Konoha is where you feel is the right place, then stay. If it's the land of eddies, then go. Only time will tell if you've made the right decision. And, that is a Kurenai quote, Kurenai claimed, which made Yugao laugh. Yeah, I suppose it does, Yugao replied, not exactly feeling better, but a certain weight had left her spirit. She continued to talk with Kurenai for a little longer before it was decided that they meet up with the rest of their friends. Anko was supposed to have returned from a mission and Hana should have been in the village somewhere. Naruto smiled as he waved Hiyashi, Hazashi, Sasuke and Makoto. The meeting's hours drew long and he was more than thrilled to have an end to the day. Now, he'd just be holed up in his office signing off on paperwork. However, before he could step out, slender hands wrapped around his shoulders and chest. Where do you think you're going? Kushina asked, a passionate smirk on her face. Naruto stilled when he saw the hunger in his mother's eyes. I thought we were gonna pick that up later, the summoner of the shinigami said before he stilled as his mother kissed him. She quickly searched out his tongue and massaged it with her own. Naruto's senses roared to life, his eyes becoming glossed with pleasure. It's later now. Besides, no one's in the house, and I want you. I want you to fuck me right here, right now, Kushina whispered huskily into her son's ear. Naruto swallowed nervously and was more than prepared to follow through with his wife's desire until a frown came upon his face. Kushina quickly followed suit, both turning their heads to see the shinigami glaring down on them. Your affairs shall take their hold, Uzumaki Naruto. It has come time to continue your training which shall encompass you both. You have yet to master either flame properly. Should you continue amateurishly, it shall not end well with you. Now, come, the shinigami said, pointing a finger to the mountains far away from the compound. He then slowly disappeared, which left Naruto and Kushina alone. The latter couldn't help but pout. Kushina released her son. He's got really awkward timing, she claimed. She looked down and smiled, noticing that her son continued to hold her by her waist. She very much liked it. Something tells me he decided to do this on purpose. Still, I don't think I'm allowed to turn him down. I'll just have a clone handle the work in the office, Naruto claimed. Kushina agreed, and the married couple swiftly journeyed in the direction the shinigami bade them to go. The journey was rather long, pushing them through dense forests and treacherous streams. Nevertheless, they came upon a cave in the land of eddies and entered it. Opening his palm, Naruto summoned a ball of white honcho, lighting the cave for them both as they continued to head inside. The deeper the cave got, the hotter it became, both realized. What surprised them most of all was a set of stone-cut stairs leading them further into the cave. In hindsight, they should have questioned it, but they found themselves descending regardless. It was only when they reached the very bottom did they start to think that something was wrong. As this sculpted stone, that shouldn't be possible. No one's been authorized to work down here, Kushina thought. Her confusion was because the obvious rocky walls of the cave had steadily turned into constructed stone, almost like some sort of underground temple. Pillars as high as the grandest ceiling melded perfectly with the cave wall. Even the floor gave way to perfectly layered stones, one carefully next to another. Fear not where I led you. It is for your benefit. Come quickly, the voice of the shinigami said, his deep voice providing an almost comforting, reverberating chill through the cavern halls. Naruto and Kushina bravely stepped forward, marveling at the temple-like walls until they passed beneath a glorious archway. Passing through it, the two Uzumaki were stunned at the vast magnitude of the room they'd entered. Inside was an extraordinarily vast pool. Inside the pool didn't seem to be water. It was much too white, and it glowed with a magnificence that could make normal eyes go blind. The walls were lined with mysterious vine-like growths, each pulsing with leaves of gold and violet fire. This isn't possible. It would have taken years to create something like this, Kushina said while Naruto approached the stone walls. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki touched them. It seemed so strange. There was power in these walls, a sense of familiarity even. How hadn't he known that something like this was down here? Almost as if to answer his question, the shinigami appeared before them. Do not ponder this matter further than needed. I have carefully measured and laid the foundation of this place while Mother remade the destruction caused by Jashin. Uzumaki Naruto, dip your hand into the pool, the shinigami said. Confused, though obedient, Naruto slowly nodded. Ah, okay, he replied. He stepped over to the pool. Kushina watched her son kneel down and do as instructed. His hand touched the white pool and he sunk it into the shallow edge of it. Arhike. Kushina's blood ran cold when she saw her son scream in utter agony as he fell back. Naruto, what's wrong? Kushina asked as she watched her son grab his hand like it had been crushed underneath a large stone. Meanwhile, the shinigami continued to watch on impassively. Acting quickly, Kushina grabbed her son's hand. When she looked at it, she frowned. What the, she thought as she saw something that defied all common sense. Her son's hand was pulsing to such a degree that she could see veins underneath the skin. Yet, that wasn't the only strange thing. The veins glowed with a gold light, not unlike the golden flames her son practiced with. What's happening to him? Kushina asked, turning her attention toward the shinigami. The god of death didn't answer her, instead choosing to watch his summoner struggle until the pain subsided. Naruto rolled onto his back and gasped for air while Kushina held his hand. His face was caked in sweat and his breath became restless. After a moment, Naruto slowly opened his eyes, quickly catching his mother's worried expression. What was that? The blonde asked. That is what you shall be training in until I have deemed you, and your charges, worthy of greater feats. Tell me, Uzumaki Naruto, do you believe yourself beyond improvement simply because you have felled my brother? The shinigami asked. Naruto slowly leaned up with his mother's help, keeping a hand on his chest to steady him. Nevertheless, the god's deep, inquisitively commanding tone left no second guessing. And, the answer was clearly right in front of him. It was an answer he hadn't pondered given the time allotted him. Between the construction and the safety of the masses, he'd not really had time for self-reflection. No, I would have lost if it hadn't been for you, Shin, and the others. Even more than that, Jashin didn't think much of me. If he took things seriously, we wouldn't have survived, Naruto answered. Though the Shinigami's expression remained neutral, he was pleased that his summoner had discovered the matter for himself. And why do you believe that is? The Shinigami inquired. Naruto looked at the god of death confused. Ah, 'cause you're gods and I'm not. Naruto answered as a question. The Shinigami nodded. A rather crude answer, albeit perhaps in line with your mindset. You have grown and you have exceeded every measure by which I have tested you. What I shall train you both in, is that very line which you cannot cross by your own might. What stands before you is a pool meant for the strengthening of the soul. While I have no use for it, many of gods have bathed in it, considering it a leisurely pastime. What you felt was the reinforcing, strengthening, and refining of your soul. In here, all your training will commence, and you shall not leave until you can masterfully thrive out there, the Shinigami said, pointing into the endless depths of the pool beyond where the two Uzumaki could see. What's out there? Kushina asked. The pool is specially crafted to your benefit. Had you stepped at its full might, your soul would have been crushed into nothingness, something quite similar to what happened to you when you embraced the violet flames. Had your soul been strengthened before the battle with Jashin, it would have granted you greater ease in merging your soul with mine, and you would have endured the violet flames with profound mastery. Take care that every foot further strengthens the might of the pools. Do not enter them haphazardly, the Shinigami explained slowly. Being the god of death, he had a firm understanding into the thoughts of mortals. He'd been dealing with them even beyond this universe's history. In essence, he knew the thoughts surrounding his young summoner and his newest wife. No doubt they wondered if such a thing had been available before, why hadn't the Shinigami allowed them to use it to better equip them against Jashin? Nevertheless, he allowed them ask at their leisure. If it could do all that, why didn't we use it after Jashin took over the earth? Kushina asked. The Shinigami turned to her, and the red death shirked beneath his mighty gaze, feeling a chill run down her back. Uzumaki Naruto was not ready. To enter the pools is to be confronted with the weaknesses of one's own soul, the very essence of one's own being. Had he entered while the matters of his soul were divided, the simple touch he did just now would have been enough to end him. That he has survived has shown the depth of his growth. Know that nearly none upon your world would survive if they encountered this, the Shinigami explained. Naruto swallowed nervously and so did Kushina. But, you could just revive him, right? Kushina asked. Upon her question, the Shinigami remained silent, the tense sound of falling water drops from the cavern ceiling filling the ambiance. After some time, Naruto finally answered. So why now? Naruto asked. The god of death turned to his summoner. To prepare you for the journey ahead which you shall undertake. For the days are long and the time is short. And, whether your world shall remain established shall be determined by you. Should you fail, not just your world but many beyond them shall be felled in the sundering. 3721. Chapter 91. Quote, soulmates aren't the ones who make you happiest, no. They're instead the ones who make you feel the most. Burning edges and scars and stars. Old pangs, captivation, and beauty. Strain and shadows and worry and yearning. Sweetness and madness and dreamlike surrender. They hurl you into the abyss. They taste like hope. Victoria Erickson. Ni-sama, are you sure this is a good idea? Yura inquired, staring at the underground pool that Naruto and Kushina showed her and Yuri. As soon as the Shinigami's business was concluded, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki wasted no time bringing the two Uzumaki sisters. Of course, the thought of causing them such pain disturbed him greatly, but the warning from the Shinigami disturbed him and Kushina even more. When asked for an explanation, the Shinigami merely told him that he was not yet ready to know. As much as Naruto respected Shin, such cryptic warnings started to get on his nerves. Of course, he tempered his tongue and his aggression in front of the unfathomable abyssal might of the god of death, but he just didn't understand it. How was he supposed to prepare for something he didn't know was coming? Even more than that, why did it sound even heavier than what he'd dealt with Jashin? That battle took him to the furthest edges of his battle prowess and beyond that. What could be worse? When asked of the death god, the shinigami merely replied in a tone that not even Naruto could believe. Should I tell you of the matters you shall undertake, your heart shall fail you, Uzumaki Naruto. Yes, you have a boundless spirit, one that has impressed me in more ways than you realize. Nevertheless, that time that you were and the time that you shall be are not the same. Remember that, the shinigami said. While finding Yuri and Yura, the blonde contemplated those words. It seemed like the shinigami meant to say that the him currently wasn't ready for the matters presented, but the him in the future would be. It was perhaps no different than a child not being ready for grown-up responsibilities. Maybe it had to do with a level of maturity that he simply didn't possess. And yet, Naruto certainly felt more in tune with himself since he'd managed to get rid of the hole in his heart. His thinking had never been clearer, yet there was so much more to learn. When he found Yuri and Yura, he eagerly teleported them back to the location, explaining to them what the shinigami had told him. If Yura was going to continue training with the gold and violet flames, and Yuri gaining measures of his spiritual strength, then he figured that the pool would do wonders for them as well. At least, he hoped it would. Perhaps if it was a success for them, it'd be a success for the others. That is, if the shinigami allowed it. To be honest, we're not really sure ourselves, but the shinigami has never led us astray before. That said, it seems to be more for Naruto's benefit than ours. We'll also have to build a containment measure around this cave to ensure no one comes in unexpectedly. Even Naruto was nearly taken down just from dipping his hand into the pool. We'll become a rather bloodthirsty nation if we have people dying in here, Kushina said. Yura blinked. And we're going to dip in this? She asked hesitantly. Not before I do. Once I can at least get in, then I'll be willing to let the three of you come in as well. I don't know what to expect, and I'm not gonna put the three of you through that, Naruto returned. Yuri hummed. Okay, but how are we gonna get back here? The shinigami wants us to this pool almost every day, right? Well, if Nichan keeps doing that, then he'll be using all his portals to send us back and forth. It's not like he can leave the cage summit. The last one in Suna took at least 2 full days before a break was issued, the Sanbi Jinchuriki claimed. Then, the cage will just have to make do. Remember, we have been tasked to briefly keep the peace between the nations. We prioritize the orders of the shinigami above anything else. However, it's unreasonable to tell them to stop all discussions since we don't know how long we'll be down here. To that end, I suggest that you all go to the cage summit this time. Once the meeting is finished, Sochi can explain that we have these matters to attend to. That'll at least allow us to operate in peace, Kushina suggested. Yuri and Yura turned to the Uzumaki patriarch. He continued to look at the pool while his hands moved, almost acting like a visible representation of varying thoughts. What do you all think? Naruto asked, bringing his other summons to the forefront. It sounds like a good idea, Naruto-sama. However, I'd suggest that should the matters of the cage summit require someone to mediate, then I suggest that you hand the role to Riza-san. Think about it, she's the most neutral party amongst the clan, having never been raised in any of the 5 great nations. Additionally, she's aware of the political environment more than anyone else, aside from maybe Kushina-sama and Shi-san. She could venture out while you train here, Dan suggested. The idea certainly holds weight. However, I believe another matter should be considered, Kimimaro explained, quickly revealing his own thoughts on the matter. Naruto hummed and the others continued to offer various suggestions, even going as far as just to throw ideas out. He even asked Kurama, but the nine-tailed fox made swift mention that he didn't care about human politics. The fox refused to get involved, as did the kindred and Morio. He didn't even bother asking Kagura. She'd retreated into the very depths of her own space, refusing to be disturbed. That said, of all the voices, Naruto noticed one that was missing. And what do you think, Pakura? Naruto inquired. Immediately, the others fell silent. They shifted their gazes toward the former Suna Kunoichi, who seemed to be surprised that she'd been called. You're asking me, Naruto-sama? She questioned. Naruto's face remained even, yet he continued to speak. Yeah, I am. Ero Sennin said that I shouldn't overlook advice, no matter how against it I might be. If I had been Hokage, I would have needed to look at multiple angles on multiple issues. And, I need yours, Naruto admitted. Pakura clenched her hands into fists, unwilling to show just how happy those comments made her. Had she been able to, she might have burst into tears. What made it even better was the fact that she could feel her summoner's spirit reach out toward hers. She couldn't even resist when they touched, like a firm handshake from a long-lost best friend. Pakura stood to her feet and hummed. If it's not possible to send a clone, then I would suggest that Naruto-sama attend the 5-cage summit this one time. However, once the meeting is finished, inform the cage that all further summits should be held in Uzushiogakur due to time constraints. That way, it won't require so many teleports. Riza-san can handle unessential matters. If there are further pressing issues, then it won't take long for Riza-san to contact you, Pakura claimed. Naruto continued to listen, as did the others, until he finally severed the connection and faced his lovers. Sorry about that, he apologized. Yuri blinked. So what advice did you get? You were clearly talking to someone over there, she smirked, much to Naruto's amusement. I was getting some suggestions and I think I found a good use for all of them, Naruto said. For the next few minutes, he told Kushina, Yuri, and Yura the plans which he'd thought of according to the suggestions of his summons. The three continued to nod as understanding filled them until they knew everything. That could work. We'd have to pass it to the cage, but they shouldn't have reason to refuse, Yura commented. Then that's what we'll have to do for now. Naruto is set to leave in 2 days and we'll need to get in as soon as possible. While you can teleport there, it's not good for you to be arriving at the last minute, and that goes for you too as well, Kushina said, glancing at Yura and Yuri. The latter smiled sheepishly while the former quickly nodded. Seeing this, Naruto clapped his hands. Good, then we'd better not waste any time, Naruto said, throwing off his shirt. His pants swiftly followed suit. When he turned around, he grinned at the arousal expressions of his lovers. Yuri swallowed, biting her lip with her eyes sailing over his exposed body. She couldn't deny that the sight of Kushina and Naruto fucking still remained lodged in her head. Her legs shook as she remembered how hard Naruto used to fuck her too until his imposed celibacy. Just looking at his man's mast, growing from the attention, made her legs weak. Yura blushed furiously, a hand over her face to hide her embarrassment, yet her eyes remained glued to Naruto's form. Though she could tell her little sister was joking, Yura did want to have sex too. However, she still wanted to be married first. Though, she could at least imagine what her own honeymoon would be like. As for Kushina, well, she really wanted to resume her honeymoon. Her fire had hardly been quenched when they were forced to stop, at least out of consideration for their family. Of course, it was easy to be so disciplined, but Kushina already missed the sensation of her son's body against hers. This show certainly didn't help. I guess you ladies can't just call guys perverts anymore, Naruto said, snapping them out of their reverie. I'll only perv on you, Naruto ni. Besides, we're perverts too. We're just more subtle about it. And we didn't tell you to give us a strip show, though I certainly enjoyed it. Yuri exclaimed. Why Yuri? Yura retorted meekly. The younger sibling cackled before they straightened up when Naruto approached the pool. He inhaled and exhaled slowly. He then stepped into the white pool. As soon as his foot entered the white liquid, Naruto gritted his teeth and lost his balance. He fell back onto the ground while he forced his other foot into the pool. NGH. Naruto groaned, falling down until his back hit the floor. Immediately, Kushina, Yuri, and Yura drew close to him, each gravely concerned. Pull him out, Kushina said hurriedly. The two sisters nodded, grabbing his arms before the Kyuubi Jinchuriki grabbed them. And no, I'm fine. I got it. I got it, he said through clenched teeth, hoping to placate his lovers even as his body felt like it was being pulled apart. Even just breathing seemed like a luxury that he couldn't afford. Unbridled power surged within the depths of Naruto's body. It strangely felt like every blood vessel was being filled to bursting. Hell, he even likened it to a million ants scratching, biting, and gnawing away at his skin without hesitation all at the same time. It also didn't help that Kurama and the others were experiencing the same discomfort. Nevertheless, they hoped to power through, trying to see the benefit from the sheer agony they were experiencing. And Naruto ni, are you sure? Yuri asked, nearly on the verge of tears. Her lover's veins were pulsing with such intensity that they were visible across his entire body. His hair changed from its usual blonde look to a very silverish white color. The ground behind his back cracked, forcing the three Uzumaki ladies to retreat a little. His body must have been hot because he started to sweat. However, this sweat wasn't like any sweat the Sanbi Jinchuriki had seen before. It almost looked like he was sweating milk. White droplets seeped from every part of his body, turning into hot steam when they touched the ground. Like blood, the white fluid spilled out of his eyes, nose, and mouth. Concerned, the three kunoichi could only hold him in some vain attempt to help him bear the pain. They even grew worried when they heard several of Naruto's bones snap out of place. It was a sickening sound that made them want to turn their heads. Hell, Kushina was about to go over Naruto's head and have them pull him out of the pool. The only thing that stopped her was the sight of her son's body finally returning to normal. His breathing steadied and his grip loosened in their hands. Finally, after nearly 15 minutes of utter agony, Naruto breathed a little easier. Gritting his teeth, the blonde pulled himself up and slowly slipped into the pool. Naruto ni, don't, Yuri warned, but Naruto eased her concerns with a smile. He then continued until all but his head was submerged in the white pool. A groan here, a hiss there, Naruto tried to distract himself with other thoughts while he attempted to take controlled breaths. After a moment or two, the unease subsided and he was finally able to enjoy the pool, at least for now. It's okay. I'm okay, Naruto reassured, leaning his head back against the groove of the stone. Kushina knelt next to her son, looking at him skeptically. Are you sure? You didn't look alright that whole time we were holding you, she glared. She then stiffened, resisting the urge to release a pleasant sigh when her son caressed her cheek. I promise, Ka-chan. Feeling better already, Naruto insisted until he heard Kurama groan. Speak for yourself, brat, the nine-tailed fox growled out, shaking his head from the impressive surge of might suddenly thrust upon him. The others were just now standing on their feet. Not having the strength to speak against the Kyuubi, Naruto decided to immerse himself in the pool a little more. Now that his body wasn't splitting in two, he had the time to contemplate what he was feeling. The liquid wasn't like water. It was very thick, so much so it felt like Naruto was sinking more in mud or even honey. Yet, there seemed to be no resistance from it. If he wanted to move his hands or legs, the liquid gave way. In fact, he'd liken it to the sheets of bed more than anything else. So, how are you feeling? Do you feel any different? Yura questioned. Now that was a question Naruto wasn't sure how to answer. He certainly felt something. However, he wasn't sure what it was. He felt very warm, and his body felt rather heavy. There also seemed to be an uncomfortable feeling swelling deep within him. Well, actually, maybe uncomfortable was the wrong word. He just felt weird. However, it was a good weird. Unlike when he got in the pool, where he felt like ants were trying to crawl out of every concert of his skin, he now felt something akin to gently flowing water. To liken it to anything, it felt like the hot water in an onsen, gently bubbling beneath the surface. Not really. I don't feel anything at all, at least anything uncomfortable. I can't say I feel stronger. I just feel like I'm sitting in a pool and doing nothing, Naruto answered, pulling a cupful of the liquid into his hands and pouring it back into the pool. I won't lie. This feels a little anticlimactic. I thought there were gonna be lights flashing around Naruto ni, and like thousands of explosions. All he gets is a bath? Yuri asked. Yura turned to her sister. Well, based on what Ni-sama and Kushina-san said, the pool is supposed to be Shinigami-sama's way of refining the soul. If we take it like one refines shinobi tools, then I guess it's not meant to be a quick process. Maybe Ni-sama has to do it multiple times over multiple periods. It's possible, we won't see a change for years, Yura reasoned. Yuri hummed. I guess. Though, based off Naruto ni just getting into the pool, it certainly looked like something happened. So, how long is he supposed to stay in here? He's not gonna get all wrinkly, is he? Yuri then asked. Kushina leaned up. Well, those are questions we'll most likely know as we go along. Sochi, do you think we can get in? Kushina asked. The smile on Naruto's face slowly fell as he looked at the pool. He inhaled and then exhaled slowly. Hang on, he said. He then summoned 3 clones. I'll use these clones to pull you guys out if it seems too painful, he returned. The others agreed and quickly undressed. Now it was their turn to blush, grin, and smirk when Naruto, and his clones, found themselves utterly captivated by their bodies. Kushina offered her husband a pose and Yuri followed suit. Yura was a little more reserved, but Naruto enjoyed her treat all the same. Unfortunately, the pleasantries were done away with when the three entered the pool. Naruto had to clench his hands together while the clones held their shoulders when they screamed in anguish and agony. Believed that Naruto trusted the shinigami and believed that there was a reason for all of this, but to see the same excruciating pain on the face of his lovers that he had was a severely uncomfortable feeling. It took all his nerve and grit not to call the matter off. However, he couldn't coddle them. He wouldn't demean their strength. He wouldn't think them lesser than him. Yet, he would worry. He was allowed that much. If things really did get dire, then he'd intervene. Thankfully, Naruto didn't have to suffer watching for long, and the girls didn't have to suffer the pain for long either. For some reason, they did suffer a bit longer than Naruto did, but, with help, they were finally allowed to settle in the pool and enjoy it. Naruto dismissed the clones while the girls sat next to him. "That hurt," Yuri said, swiftly taking her favorite spot. She sat on Naruto's pelvis, grinning when he looked at her suspiciously. She merely smiled at him, quickly noticing Kushina looking inquisitively. "What?" she asked, a smirk tearing across her lips. After a moment of staring, Kushina turned her head forward, smiling. "Nothing. I'll let you have this one. After all, you'll need all the points you can get." "I'll be sure to do the same when it's your honeymoon," Kushina replied. The smirk on Yuri's face slowly fell. "You think I'm scared of you? Bring it on," Yuri challenged, throwing her arms around his neck. She even surprised Naruto, smashing her lips against his. She then shoved her tongue into his mouth, slowly and sensually touching his chest. Kushina felt a slight twinge of jealous annoyance, but she decided to tolerate Yuri's confidence this once. It certainly didn't help that the sight turned her on, if only a little. Not even a week into her new marriage and her husband was already brazenly flirting with other women in front of her. What a world she'd decided to come back to. "Can you two stop?" Yura exclaimed, making the two part with a smack of their lips. Yuri turned to her sister and licked her lips. "You just wanna take over now that I got Naruto ni all warmed up. He's really hard, Yura nay. You wanna deal with it?" Yuri inquired, tormenting her sister immensely. "We're here for training, Yuri. Not for you to mess around," Yura chastised. Yuri offered a cheeky smile before she finally relented. She kissed her lover one more time before she slipped off him. Of course, that didn't help the Uzumaki patriarch as he was left to cool the flames of his own lust. "How is it that I'm the one who got the short end of the stick here?" Naruto questioned. "'Cause you refuse to take charge, brat. Look at my little brother's host. She's clearly challenging you. You know what you should do," Kurama suggested viciously, implanting images of Naruto grabbing Yuri and doing whatever he wished with her. None of it helped cool Naruto off and he was more than tempted to follow through with what Kurama proposed, yet he shook his head. "No, I got something better," the blonde said. Kurama raised an eyebrow before he and many others caught a glimpse into Naruto's thoughts. Oh my. So daring," Suiren claimed, a faint blush on her cheeks while Yahiko boisterously laughed. Dan and Kimimaro kept their expressions even, unwilling to be susceptible to their summoner's nonsense. As for Pakura, she just shook her head. HMPH, human mating. "Like I need to see that," Wolf growled while Lamb sat in the mindscape. Aside from him, she simply had no opinion one way or the other. Instead, Lamb continued to take in the might of the pool through her summoner. Her bow had already strengthened itself. "Enough of your mockeries. Take this matter seriously," Morio exclaimed, knocking everyone out of their amusement. On the outside, Naruto exhaled slowly and nodded. Of course, he wouldn't let Yuri go forever, but he couldn't afford to have fun right now. "All right, focus," Naruto ordered. The others quickly agreed and started focusing. The minutes passed by slowly before Yuri cleared her throat. What should we be focusing on?" she asked. Yura opened her eyes. "I really don't know," she said, lifting a handful of the liquid. She watched her pass through her fingers. Aside from entering the pool, she hadn't felt much different. Then again, they imagined that perhaps they had to do this more than once. Kushina merely leaned back and sighed. She looked out into the vast pool and turned to her son. "Think you can go further?" she asked. Shrugging, Naruto stood up and cautiously stepped forward. He didn't even make it 5 steps before he suddenly screamed in agony, startling his lovers. Screaming in the worst way imaginable, Naruto was forced to his knees. Immediately, Kushina, Yuri, and Yura shot up. They quickly grabbed him and pulled him back into their side of the pool. Naruto heaved for air, feeling the pain subside soon enough. He felt like something within him had torn. It was like the feeling of having torn a muscle from training too hard. When he rubbed his lip, he noticed blood on his palm. Kuso. That hurt even more than just entering the pool. I almost lost consciousness, Naruto huffed, rubbing the sweat from his head while his lovers rested him against the edge of the pool. Ni-sama, your eyes red. Yura exclaimed. Thanks to the reflective surface of the pool, Naruto was able to look down and see that Yura was right. His right eye was red. More specifically, the sclera maintained a powerfully crimson color that slowly started to recede away as Naruto continued to rest. After a moment, it fully disappeared as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's breathing eased. I think that's enough experimenting for one day, Yuri suggested. Kushina agreed and motioned that none of them move beyond the edge of the pool until sometime later. All of them agreed, and they sat at the edge quietly. Time seemed slow, so they bothered with casual conversation, not really seeing the point of doing anything else. Meanwhile, as they sat unaware, the Shinigami watched the four Uzumaki. His eyes narrowed for only a moment before he slowly faded away. Makoto-sama, I would like to speak with you. Makoto, who'd been eating some fruit, suddenly found herself losing her appetite. Her ears quickly picked up on the familiar voice. After all, there was only one person who addressed her like that. Sighing slowly, Makoto turned around and spotted Yuna in the doorway, rubbing her arms nervously. Now, Makoto was quick to admit that the Uchiha weren't the most expressive individuals, especially in sensitive matters, but there was a vulnerability in Yuna's eyes that seemed so unfamiliar to the former Konoha Jonin. Being her also, Makoto had an idea of what this was about. I see. Would you like to take a seat? Makoto inquired, offering one of the many seats at the table. However, Yuna shook her head. Not here, please. I'd like us to not be disturbed, Yuna said, gesturing toward the door. Catching the meaning, Makoto nodded. She stood up and walked outside with Sasuke's lover. As they walked, it seemed like Yuna didn't have a location in mind to take them. They just seemed to walk aimlessly, passing by shops and homes being constructed. Men and women would wave at them happily and they returned the gestures. They left the streets and towns, entering the dense, lush forests. Makoto wasn't sure how long the walk took, but they found themselves on a cliff overlooking the shores of the land of eddies. The seas seemed a little rough out there, waves crashing this way and that. A few fishermen's boats were out there, earning their living and restoring the trade which had long been lost. The wind certainly felt good. The two ladies stood there in awkward silence for a little while, neither sure how to broach the subject that they both knew they were stalling. The village seems to be steadily progressing, Makoto said, clearly attempting to break up the silence. Yeah, everyone's been working hard. I heard that there's going to be another cage summit taking place in Iwagakure. I don't think Naruto-sama's gonna be too happy about that one, Yuna said, chuckling. Makoto smiled. Kushina's probably the unhappiest out of everyone. I heard from Fuka that their honeymoon had to be put on hold. Apparently, they were, quite vigorous, Makoto answered, clearing her throat with a faint blush. Yuna coughed. Why yes, I heard that as well. I suppose forced celibacy will do that, Shisui's older sister returned before the two settled back into silence. However, it wouldn't last for long. The younger Uchiha brushed her black hair. Her dark eyes stared out into the ocean, a myriad of thoughts fusing into one. Makoto-sama, forgive me for being frank, but I think a little straightforwardness is needed here. Do you love Sasuke? And, please don't insult me. You know what I'm talking about, Yuna said. Damn, it really seemed like Makoto was being pushed into a corner. She never thought she'd be put there by Yuna of all people. Nevertheless, the question demanded an honest answer and Makoto quickly realized she was forced to confront her own thoughts on the matter. I really don't know, Makoto said. That was not the answer Yuna was expecting or liking. She had not agonized over this conversation for months just to hear an, I don't know, from Makoto. Clan matriarch or not, Yuna would give her future mother-in-law a piece of her mind if she seriously thought. I am attracted to Sasuke, but I can't answer if I love him as you imagine I do. I don't know if I'm attracted to him because of a lack of male attention, or if it's really him. I've tried to answer the question myself. I've gone on a few harmless dates with some men, hoping to find the answer. And, as you can see, I haven't had much success in my romantic ventures. I thought it meant I should settle for being single moving forward, but, Sasuke, my son, I am drawn to him. The things I do with him, our conversations, our interactions, everyone is precious in my heart and makes my chest burst. No one makes me as happy as he does. Yet, I wonder if my attentions are misplaced, Makoto said. Yuna blinked, taking in this information slowly. How so? She asked. As you know, Kushina and I are best friends. There's hardly anything we don't share with each other. I sometimes wondered if I felt a little jealous when I saw Kushina and Naruto, wondering if I was just projecting my unfulfilled desires onto Sasuke. When we danced in the Fire Daimyo's palace, that was the first time I properly looked at my son as a proper man, one I couldn't help being attracted to despite the implications. And, that only made me feel worse, knowing that he found love, a wonderful thing with you. I cursed my own selfishness, wondering if fate was playing some cruel trick on me, putting both of us in so many unfortunate situations. However, I want you to know that nothing's ever happened between Sasuke and I. I would never do that to you, Makoto said honestly. Yuna sighed and nodded. Yeah, I know. Sasuke might be an emotionally stunted, charismatic guy, but he's no playboy. Sasuke told me, months ago, about the things going on between the both of you. I admit that I was angry and worried many nights, but Sasuke, somehow, managed to put up with me, never once letting me think that he'd abused my trust. He comforted me when I needed it, and gave me space when I needed it, and I don't know what to do with all that damn honesty. I can't say I don't understand a little. I had no interest in relationships back when Shisui was still alive, only caring about my career until I died. However, Sasuke somehow wormed his way in and I imagined the many regrets I had, all the friends who enjoyed the fruits of love and romance, Yuna said. Makoto smiled. I'm certain Naruto-kun would say otherwise to Sasuke's methods if we asked him how Sasuke grew up, she answered a little solemnly. Yuna nodded. Well, I would understand if relationships were the last thing on his mind considering what Itachi did, deserved or not, Yuna claimed. Makoto didn't bother saying anything while Yuna exhaled slowly. I am willing to allow you both to see where this goes, Yuna suddenly said. Huh. Makoto widened her eyes and turned to Yuna. Sasuke's girlfriend didn't bother looking at her future mother-in-law. Too embarrassed, she turned her head away. What? Makoto asked. Yuna sighed. Trust me, I agonized over the decision for months. I haven't even discussed it with Sasuke yet. I also think I've spent too much time around Yura and Yuri. I don't want anyone agonizing in misery over stupid stuff like this. I want you to realize that if this was anyone else, I wouldn't even entertain this stupid idea, but because it's you, I can at least sustain a clearer conscience. You and Sasuke figure out whatever you are. If it's what you think it is, then I want the air cleared, Yuna responded. Makoto quickly, and fully, faced her. Yuna, I can't ask you to do that. You don't need to be so considerate of me. What Naruto and Kushina have, I don't believe it's something Sasuke and I can handle. Naruto never had Kushina around, it was likely easier for them. Sasuke and we can't. And, I couldn't tear you apart like that with my actions, Makoto said. Yuna hummed. Oh, trust me. I actually feel more pulled together than I've been the last few months, so much so it's been affecting my work ethic. I don't know about others, but I don't like unresolved mess. It only leads to bigger mess and that mess leads to a cascading mess. I'm heading this problem off before I say something I regret, or you and Sasuke do something you might regret. And given that I have faith in Sasuke not to do it, that leaves only myself. Trust me, this isn't just for you. It's for me as well. Just know that this is the one chance I'm offering. If you regret it later, I won't allow it a second time, Makoto-sama, Yuna claimed. If Makoto could say anything, this forcefulness from Yuna was kind of surprising. Nevertheless, Makoto realized where Sasuke's girlfriend was coming from, and what she was risking as well. It would only be an insult if Makoto entered into this haphazardly. The older black-haired woman looked at the ground, the smell of the sea stinging her nose. Are you sure about this? Makoto inquired. Not at all, but it's the only thing I can think of. However, I want you to know I'm pretty jealous. Even if you are Sasuke's mother, you'll never love him more than I do, Yuna boldly claimed. Makoto widened her eyes, glaring at the smirk on Yuna's face. As a not really competitive person, Makoto wasn't too sure what to make of such a declaration. Yuna and Makoto continued to talk the day away, revealing insecurities and sharing stories. Over and over, they toyed and danced around the idea of what they were proposing. They discussed the fallout. They spoke of the numerous things that could go wrong. They even talked of other partners, something neither wished for. Yuna sure as hell wasn't going to go through this again. If Sasuke even dared add anyone else, Yuna would twist his neck into dust. I don't know. Yuna, I'm not Kushina. I don't know if I can. Makoto-sama, Yuna interrupted, making Sasuke's mother turn to her. There's no fun in knowing everything, Yuna replied. Makoto's next words died in her throat while Yuna turned around, stuffing her hands back in her pockets. She then walked away while Makoto looked off to the side. The Uchiha matriarch thought of Sasuke, wondering what he'd think of her if they even dared take a stab at this. Kushina would tease her relentlessly. This is ridiculous. I can't actually be considering this, Makoto thought. She was the only one left on the cliff, her instincts as a mother warring with her instincts as a woman. No, it should be obvious. Makoto should deny this. She'd only been on a few dates. Surely, there had to be greater men out there that she could entertain a fulfilling marriage with. Besides, what would they speak of Uzushio if people learned that even the Uchiha followed in the Uzumaki's footsteps? Could she have Sasuke live through such political suicide? What's wrong with me? Makoto asked, looking into the beautiful ocean. There was set to be a storm it seemed. Damn it, it just had to start raining now. Tayuya scowled as she opened the door to the clan's main building. When she opened it, she spotted most of her beloved family amusing themselves with the living room. Tayuya-ne-san, welcome home, Yukimaru said, alerting the others to her presence. She sucked her teeth and threw off her clothes. Yeah, what are you all doing in here? She asked, opening the door to wring out some of the water from her hair. Trying to keep warm mostly. Heating installation is still a long way away. That said, it's given Gurren some time to perfect her grilling skills, she said, grinning when he saw his cousin scowl. I burned it one time, she exclaimed, making the others look at her skeptically. Fuka patted Gurren's shoulder before she returned to combing and brushing her hair. Yeah, it and the rest of the dinner. We had to go hungry that night. It's only good that you can't really mess up fish, especially not with the recipes offered by the local fishermen. A hot bowl of fish soup never hurt anyone, Fuka claimed smiling. The others agreed while Tayuya snorted. Right, well, I'm gonna get the hell out of these clothes before I form my own damn river, Tayuya said, slopping across the floor and heading toward her room. The others watched her go before Riza hummed. Speaking of stragglers, has anyone seen our illustrious patriarch? There's stuff he's got to sign off on. Not to mention Haku's been looking for him, Riza said. Ah, I saw Naruto-san, Kushina-san, Yura-san, and Yuri-san heading deep into the forests. I would have asked but it seemed purposeful so I left them alone, Komachi claimed. The others remained silent for a moment. A mischievous smile crept its way onto Karen's face. She didn't even have to say anything for the others to know what she was thinking. In the end, even Fuka joined her, leaning an elbow on her shoulder. I see that wicked little mind of yours working, cousin. What do you think they're doing out there, alone, with only each other for company? Fuka asked. Well, it depends if Kushina decides to be a team player. We did kind of ruin their honeymoon after all, Karen explained, grinning while she and Gurren rolled their eyes. We ruined it. They were fucking for almost 3 days straight. Gurren exclaimed, making Amaru swiftly cover Yukimaru's ears, although she had to agree. Nevertheless, Amaru glared at them as Gurren recognized her error. Offering an apology, she sighed. However, I suppose we should have been more considerate. They've held off for a long time. It's a shame we can't send them somewhere nice. None of the resorts or tourist spots are even close to opening. It'll be a long time before we can continue that. That said, I suppose we can hold training events for Yukimaru over the weekend, away from the compound, she suggested. Shion cleared her throat nervously. Why yes, that might be suitable. My duties to the shrine have reduced my own proficiency in our clan's sacred arts. I would like to pick up where I left off, Shion explained. Feeling the conversation dying down, Amaru released her hands from Yukimaru's ears while Gurren moved to speak. Well, regardless of whatever they're doing, we should check on them. Trust me, no one in the right mind would mess with Naruto or the clan now, but we can't be too complacent. The Akatsuki are still out there, plus we were already warned about the Otsutsuki. We must not allow ourselves to become a liability to Naruto, Gurren warned. Riza hummed, spoken like a proper clan advisor. However, we've yet to hold the clan ascension ceremony. Unfortunately for you guys, Kushina, Naruto, and I are the only master-ranked Fuinjutsu experts here. We're the ones who have to sign off on the rest of you learning the most dangerous sealing techniques. If you're not careful, you could seal the whole of the island with no one able to escape. Such seals must be done under the proper supervision, Riza stated. Fuka rolled her eyes. Yes, we know. We were wiped out for a reason. It's a dangerous sealing practice. However, we can't stay afraid forever, the younger redhead claimed. Riza shook her head. I'm not saying be afraid. I'm saying be prepared. In fact, in this downtime, I believe we should. Before Riza could continue, the front door opened revealing Naruto, Kushina, Yura, and Yuri. Something smells good. Yuri said happily. And where have you four been? Karen asked, raising an eyebrow curiously. Having come through the door, Naruto looked at everyone's expressions perfectly. Aside from Fuka and Riza, who smiled, the others just looked at them suspiciously. He quickly started to understand what was going on when he heard Kurama gruffly chuckle within the depths of his mind. Would you like the short version or the long version? He asked, smirking when he saw the others widen their eyes. En-ni-sama, Yura exclaimed embarrassingly. Yuri and Kushina held no such reservations, merely grinning confidently. Sounds like those three got the long version enough, Fuka replied, the smile on her face widening when she saw Amaru cover Yukimaru's ears again. Having had enough, Gurren grabbed her adopted son. I hate this family sometimes. Come, Yukimaru, it's time for your calligraphy lessons. The last lessons of the day, Gurren said. Yukimaru nodded, walking up the stairs with Gurren behind him. Oh, come on. That was funny, Fuka claimed. Gurren simply flipped her off as they vanished behind the upper floor corridor. It seems Gurren-san doesn't enjoy your sense of humor, Amaru replied, making Fuka grumble. Once she was gone, she put down the scroll he'd been reading. So what were you guys actually doing? He asked curiously. Training, and we're likely gonna be doing it for a few years, Kushina mentioned, further stepping into the house. Thankfully, there was a cool breeze flowing through that left the inner rooms cool. The others quickly noticed their steeled expressions. Each glanced at each other before they turned back to the four of them. And, are you gonna tell us what kind of training that is? Shion inquired, hoping for more than what she got. Kushina, Yuri, and Yura glanced at Naruto, waiting for his judgment. The blonde found himself a little out of sorts with the attention given him. When he was younger, he would have killed for attention like this, but now it left him a little pensive. Of course, it wasn't like he was going to shy away from his decision on the matter. Now wasn't the time to doubt himself, especially if he expected his clan to have confidence in his capabilities. How long until dinner's ready? He asked. Riza shrugged. Maybe half an hour, or 45 minutes. Can't really say. Our cook vacated her station, the mother of Tayuya claimed, glancing back at the food being grilled and the soup being boiled. What a time for more seafood boil. I'll tell everyone when we've gathered for dinner. In the meantime, I'll need to see Haku about sending a letter to the other daimyo. The land of eddies might be seeing an increase in political agencies since I'll be petitioning for future summits to take place in the village, Naruto announced. It became quite clear that the others really didn't agree with this decision. Naruto, you're the clan patriarch, so forgive me if I'm overstepping my bounds, but are you sure that's a good idea? We don't have the necessary facilities to house them all. We've only just managed to maintain some semblance of order for our own borders. Things could grow tense if we bring them here, even with our special status, Riza warned. Naruto nodded and rubbed the back of his head. I agree, but Haku and I will have to do something about it. This training is too important to ignore. To be honest, I'd rather you all took it as well, but it's not something to experience casually. Besides, we have no idea when that guy Sasuke and the others fought will come back. However, he hasn't shown up yet, that gives us time to get our own affairs in order, he claimed. The others looked at each other, already knowing what he was talking about. They nodded and allowed Naruto, Kushina, Yuri, and Yura to depart for their rooms. They immediately returned in more comfortable clothes as soon as dinner was announced. The entire family came together as the food was distributed. During that time, Naruto said that he would be bringing Yukimaru, Yuri, and Hanabi with him for the next Cage Summit. He also explained the mysterious training undertaken by him and his lovers. Suffice it to say, he got the reaction he was expecting when the others grimaced. And this is supposed to help how? Yuya asked. We're still trying to figure that one out, Yuri laughed, brushing her fingers through her hair. Karen looked at them disbelievingly. You idiots are training and you don't even know what you're training in. She asked. Well, it certainly sounded stupider when Karen said it like that. Nevertheless, Yura answered. Shinigami-sama tasked Nisama and Kushina-san to enter the pools. Yuri and I were added in because we're closest to both of them in studying the principal techniques. We're not sure what we're supposed to be doing, but I believe it's for our benefit, Nisama's more than anyone else, Yura claimed. Karen snorted, yet offered no retort. The table steadily rolled into casual conversation with Yukimaru facing Naruto, breaking and sharing bread with the others. Naruto ni, if I may ask, why do I need to go? I'm not going to become a prominent heir of the clan, he said. Sad to pull himself away from the warm soup and fresh bread, yet willing to do so, Naruto leaned over and addressed Yukimaru. If you think I'm bullying you, I promise I'm not. However, given the new status put on us, it's likely that no matter where you go, there will be people hoping to get in your good graces. They will promise you things, ask things of you, and beg and plead. I simply want you, and everyone here to get used to the stupid environment we're about to find ourselves in. Even without this, it would have happened to you as Hyuga Hanabi's husband. I'm never gonna let anyone take advantage of you, Yukimaru, and neither is anyone else in this family, he claimed. Yukimaru firmly nodded. I understand. I'll work hard. I won't let anyone take advantage of Hanabi-san either, he responded. She offered a small smile. As a man, that is a proper mindset to have, Yukimaru. Never forget it, he instructed. Once everyone's bellies were full, they retreated into the furthest depths of their compound. Down there, they all practiced the lost arts of their clan together, inspiring, correcting, teaching, and encouraging each other. By the time they went to their rooms, no one was willing to stay awake. The compound grew quiet as everyone went to sleep, lulled away by the sounds of the storm outside. The next morning, Naruto immediately got dressed, but not before having a bit of fun with his wife. She could only groan in a sort of blissful pity when he wedged his morning wood into the crevice of her ass. She playfully toyed with his man's mast for a little while, grinding against him while he whispered what he'd do to her after he returned. Just that thought alone was enough for Kushina to start making plans. The redhead was going to get people out of the house even if she had to fucking teleport them away. Either way, Naruto got dressed and made his way out of the house. Walking through the familiar roads, he came upon the Hyuga compound. Desiring to meet with Hiyashi, Naruto was guided inside by the guards quickly. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki was brought through the large compound until he was brought before the Hyuga clan's meeting room. Acting quickly, Naruto discussed the matter of Hanabi journeying with him, Yukimaru, Yura, and Yuri. Hiyashi and Hanako agreed without complaint, even bringing Hanabi in to let her know what would be required of her. Having been part of the engagement of Yukimaru and Hanabi, Naruto had gotten used to seeing Hanabi around the Hyuga compound. More and more, he found himself stunned by the stark contrasts between Hinata and her sister. Compared to what he'd of the girl from interactions before, she definitely mellowed out, smiling more, frequently chatting with other children, and making goofy expressions that hardly befitted the image of Hyuga heiress. It was rather funny. Hanabi, this will be a valuable lesson for you. Not many get to sit in on the Cage Summit and listen to the issues that plague the greater shinobi world. While you're there, we expect you to honor the Hyuga clan and see how the political climate negotiates itself at the highest level. Remember, you represent not just the Hyuga clan, but the entirety of the land of Eddies. We wish you success, Hiyashi said, making Hanabi bow. I understand, father. I will not dishonor the name of the Hyuga, Hanabi said. As always, Naruto still found his good friend to be a bit too restrictive, but he'd long accepted that Hiyashi was simply going to be this way. If he was like this, he wondered what his friend's own childhood was like. Maybe he'd inquire of him at some point. When will you be leaving, Naruto-sama? Hanako questioned. Naruto sighed. either by the end of the day or early tomorrow morning. Additionally, I'm hoping Ka-chan will be able to meet with both of you and the elders of the clan later. While I'm gone, I'd like to gain an account of the progress of the other nations. I'd like to send members of the Hyuga, Fuma, and Uzumaki along with a couple of assisted agents. Guren's willing to help grow the crystal mines and offer a share of the wealth there as payment for the services provided. I'll bring up the issue of money circulation this time, Naruto explained. Hiashi hummed but agreed. Very well. I understand many have raised concerns over this issue. The printing of bills and coins is still a carefully measured matter, he said. The summoner of the Shinigami nodded, turning his head to Hanako. So, when's Hanabi's little brother due? He asked. Though Hanabi watched the interaction evenly, Naruto could tell by the clenching of her hands on her dress that she wanted to inform him. Hanako giggled, placing a hand over her mouth. Any day now. I regret to think that it might happen while you're gone. Hinata certainly worries enough, as does some of the rest of the clan. However, I've been fine. When will Kushina be joining me? Hanako asked, much to Hiyashi's embarrassment. Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of her head. Well, if I had my way, she'd be joining you already, he said. Hiyashi then quickly coughed, hoping to bring the conversation back to a more serious notation. Yes, well, I believe it best that we discuss these matters a little later. Hanabi, be prepared to head out, Hiyashi said. Hanabi swiftly agreed and left while Naruto dismissed himself, waving goodbye to Hiyashi and his wife. He even had the time to briefly talk with Neji and Hinata before he departed from the Hyuga compound. Then, his journey took him far. So far, in fact, that he had to teleport there. When he stepped out of the portal, he spotted Suigetsu standing amongst numerous soldiers clad in warrior-like garments some ways away. Come on. Pick up the slack, you bunch of losers. I could bend all of you with one hand behind my back. The man hollered. Much to Naruto's amusement, the man appeared to be picking his nose, holding a massive sword over his shoulder. Finding no reason to hide himself, he walked over to the man. You're still here. I thought you'd left weeks ago, Naruto said, alerting Suigetsu to his presence. After a brief glance in his direction, Naruto chuckled when Suigetsu turned his head away with a scowl. Please go do whatever the fuck you have to do and leave me alone, the former agent of Orochimaru urged, a flush of embarrassment hanging on his cheeks. Naruto smirked. Reluctant as he was, he'd come to interact with Sasuke's teammates. Having been remade with a new body, Jugo had lost his violent tendencies. Surprisingly, the young man decided to become a farmer, tending to the animals that happened to be on the island. No one was sure why such a change happened for him, but numerous reports had come from many that various ailments and diseases had been washed from their bodies. Perhaps that was a blessing of Kami. Naruto wasn't sure, but he took the good fortune for what it was. Either way, where he was going with this was that he understood Suigetsu a little more than before. Given the peaceful times, Suigetsu had grown bored, claiming he was gonna go out into the world and find some excitement. Apparently, he never got to do that, evidenced by his being here. Well, Naruto wasn't gonna antagonize. He could do that later. Where's Haku? He asked. Where do you think? She's spent countless days in the daimyo estate. She rarely leaves, Suigetsu claimed. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki frowned, turning his head when he and Suigetsu sensed two figures approaching them from behind. Yes, Zabuza-san, been there beside her almost every day. It's not surprising why. I believe she's been in even more meetings than you have, coordinating with the other daimyo and spreading resources where they can. To be honest, some of this is your fault. The two men quickly noticed Sasama and Kotoheim approach them. Hearing the slight against him, Naruto raised an eyebrow. And how is it my fault? The blonde asked. Kotoheim brushed a piece of her hair, looking at Naruto skeptically. You can't be serious about that, can you, savior of the world? Have you any idea how many people have tried to migrate into the land of whirlpools just to catch a glimpse of our esteemed savior? While you've been meeting with the cage, Haku's been handling the border patrols since everyone and their mother wants to meet you. I'm starting to think she's less of a daimyo and more your manager, she said, looking at him with a smirk. At this, Naruto found himself a little sheepish. Hey, no one told you idiots to stop. Suigetsu called out, much to the dismay of the training soldiers. Naruto watched this and then scratched his chin. I see. I guess I'd better go remedy that then. Speaking of which, how are the arrangements with the Fuma clan? You asked for a piece of land which I gave to you, but you're in a rather secluded spot. You sure that's okay? He asked. Sasama grinned. Are you kidding? After what we've been used to, this is an ideal spot for our clan. Trust me, if anyone in our generation complains about our location, it's because they've had it too good for too long. Besides, it's not that far from the Hyuga clan compound, about a day's journey for the average person. For the rest of us, it's hardly a hassle, Sasama stated. Naruto blinked, but found himself unwilling to mention much else. He hadn't forgotten that Kotoheim died while on that mission with him before Jashin turned the world to hell. Yuri had been getting ready for the Chunin exams to take place in Iowa as well. For them, he wanted to do something special. I see. I guess I better do something about that then, Naruto claimed as he made his way toward the largest building amongst the town-like landscape. Sasama and Kotoheim watched him go, satisfaction written across both their faces before they continued with their own duties. If Naruto had to say anything about being a celebrity, it was nice to go somewhere unimpeded. When he entered the daimyo estate, the working people quickly parted the way for him, none even bothering to check him in. Of course, as nice as that was, Naruto felt it was a glaring security hazard. That said, it was nice to have the option. However, he went through the proper channels. He had one of the administrators report his arrival to Haku. After a moment, he was allowed to continue. Naruto entered and narrowed his eyes when he saw a couple thousand scrolls sitting on top of a lengthy wooden table. At the far end of the table, Haku and Zabuza sat together, the latter handing the former scroll after scroll for her to sign off on. Need some help? Naruto asked, making the two look up. Naruto-sama, Haku exclaimed, getting ready to stand up until Naruto stopped her. I keep telling you that you don't need to do all that. Besides, I'm being told that some of this happens to be my fault. I don't have a lot of time, so I'll help with what I can, he said, summoning numerous clones. Zabuza grunted, sitting back down. Well, your fame hasn't dwindled if you were wondering. I think a little help is owed, he said, Haku reprimanding her father figure softly. So I'm told, Naruto claimed, taking a seat. He and his clones immediately got to work, helping Haku and Zabuza with much needed work for a few hours. Once the workload got a little lighter, Naruto called their attention to him. I'm gonna be heading to another cage summit in Iwagakure by late tonight or early tomorrow morning. I know I've put a lot of work on you guys, but there is another matter that I want an opinion on, he said. Zabuza frowned, yet held his irritation. Annoyed though he was, he couldn't afford to mouth off too badly at Naruto. After all, he still found it hard to believe that he and Haku had died so quickly amidst the carnage of Jashin's rampage. Moreover, he hadn't been pleased that Haku perished. Strict and stern, yet he did care for her in his own way. He wouldn't stick around like this working through paperwork if he didn't like her. And what might that be, Naruto-sama? Haku asked, a little tiredly. Naruto quickly held up a hand. I know what you're concerned about, but don't worry. I'm not gonna let you tackle the fallout alone. You see, I plan to petition the cage to have all future cage summits to happen in the land of whirlpools, Naruto mentioned. At first glance, it became clear to Naruto that neither Haku nor Zabuza was very keen on the idea. Nevertheless, they controlled their displeasure well. It just went to show that they had been around the political battlefield for a long time. They'd grown used to matters like this. What are you thinking? Haku asked calmly, placing her hands on the table. Unknown to many, she was also subservient to Naruto. Daimyo or not, she followed him first and foremost. It definitely wouldn't do for many people to know that. She'd worked hard to maintain her air of professionalism, befitting the garments, air, and posture of a daimyo. She couldn't afford to show visible acquiescence to everything Naruto spoke of. In a way, it's for the good of the nations that this happens. Shin's got more training for me, the type that I can't ignore. I don't know what it's for, but I know he wouldn't give me this if it wasn't important. To that end, I hoped to hold all other conferences here so that I could train and be a mediator. It'd also keep up my appearance. I've heard the reports about unrest in the minor nations, each negotiating heavily for resources. I'm not blind to the growing unease. If I keep disappearing, I doubt those guys out there are gonna hold out. Besides, it'd bring some commercial into the land of whirlpools for years, Naruto claimed. Haku hummed, thinking on the matter. Perhaps, however, it increases the risk as well. While I believe no one would openly contest with you, there are no doubt many who grow jealous of your power, Naruto-sama. Additionally, we won't have the resources to supply the arrangements of such a mass. We've only just made a journey towards stabilization. I would have to shift some priorities, Haku explained, almost talking to herself by the end of it. You don't have to worry about that. Ka-chan and I have actually been working on something convenient for matters like this, Naruto explained. Haku raised an eyebrow, urging Naruto to explain further. Zabuza continued to watch as Haku and Naruto traded off ideas. He found it so surreal that these were the two brats he'd held such overwhelming strength against only a few years ago. While Haku was a threat, he knew how to neutralize her without her mirrors of ice. He'd trained her ever since she was a little girl. Then there was Naruto, that stupid boy who was simply not even a major opponent getting in the way of his job. The same, wet behind the ears brat fresh out of the academy. One was now the savior of the world, governing even the cage toward peace, while the other became a de facto leader of the land of whirlpools. What times the man had seen. Hours drew on for even longer until Naruto cleared his throat. So that's fine with you? He asked. Haku hummed to herself. It will be a trying time, but I admit that the benefits do outweigh the negatives. I will confer with my cabinet. Don't expect a concrete answer for a few weeks though, she said, keeping up the appearance as the three in the room realized. Naruto slowly nodded. That's all I'll ask. If that's not possible, then I can always try and come up with something else. This is simply the best outcome I can think of on such short notice, the blonde said, shrugging his shoulders. Haku nodded. I understand. It's hard being a savior, isn't it? She joked. Naruto simply rolled his eyes at her comment, standing to his feet when a bit of time passed. With a brief goodbye, he left and returned home. Upon entering his compound, he spotted Tayuya multitasking. She seemed to be packing and studying at the same time. What are you doing? He asked. What's it fucking look like? Turns out the dipshit came around and wanted me to be a part of his team in hunting down Danzo. I've got nothing to do so I figured why the fuck not, Tayuya claimed. Of course, Naruto knew who she was talking about, but he wouldn't be him if he didn't have some sort of smartass reply to give. You're gonna have to specify the dipshit because you call a lot of people that, man and woman, he returned. Tayuya looked at him and snorted. Alright, the gay turd you locked lips with back in the academy. Ringing any bells? She asked. Okay, maybe the smartass reply wasn't the best one to give. I hate you, he said. Oh no, whatever am I gonna do? Tayuya asked, rolling her eyes. Suddenly, Naruto grinned and walked over to her. He then knelt in front of his cousin and cupped her chin, lifting her gaze toward him. What the fuck are you? I know a couple things you could do if you're up for it, he said, the smirk on his face rising as Tayuya's eyes widened. Despite herself, she growled either in embarrassment or anger. Fuck off. You're not getting me with that shit again. She fired, swatting his hand away. Oh, so I got you with it the last time? He questioned. Tayuya gawked. Quickly trying to find herself, she snarled. What the fuck do you want, besides pissing me off? She asked. Shrugging, Naruto walked away. Enjoy your trip, he mentioned. Somehow, even the way he said that made her angry. It was like she danced in the palm of his hand. I'm gonna kill that fucker one day, shinigami or not. Tayuya scowled, waiting until he was gone up the stairs for a smile to appear on her face. Most likely, he had to get packing for later. Sasuke walked through the door of his compound, sighing. He had just finished Neji into the team meant to track down Danzo. So far, he'd gotten Tayuya, Itachi, and Neji. Sasuke had thought about not inviting his brother, but even he knew that of them all Itachi had the most interaction with Danzo, given his previous responsibilities to Root, as explained by Itachi some time ago. He couldn't really rely on Jugo or Suigetsu as both had become employed by Haku to train the soldiers stationed at her building. For now, he was contemplating inviting Konan. Surely, Akatsuki had workings with Danzo as well, a man in the shadows as he was. Tired, yet hoping to form a plan of action, Sasuke was headed to the meeting room that his family used, which just so happened to need passing through the kitchen to access. When Sasuke entered the kitchen, he raised an eyebrow. At the counter, muttering to herself, was his mother. Makoto kept making strange hand gestures as if she was making conversation with someone who wasn't there. Her face would scrunch up in discomfort before she attempted to correct herself. What are you doing? Sasuke asked. At the interruption, Makoto jumped and turned her head. Sasuke, she exclaimed, completely embarrassed. Her son raised an eyebrow as he watched her, adorably, scramble herself. Clearing her throat, Makoto sighed. How long have you been standing there? She asked. A minute or two. What are you doing over there? He asked. Makoto blinked. I was just thinking out loud. Nothing you need to be concerned about, she smiled. Ordinarily, Sasuke might have believed that, yet he found himself skeptical. Even for a solitary soul like him, he'd spoken his thoughts aloud on more than one occasion. His mother's reaction seemed like he'd caught her doing something that she shouldn't be doing. What aren't you telling me? He asked. Makoto laughed strangely. Sasuke, don't be rude. A woman has many private things, especially none that her son should inquire about. What are you doing back home? She asked. Being an expert at the art of deflection, Sasuke knew when a conversation was being steered. That said, he couldn't bring himself to make his mother uncomfortable. Whatever she was doing, he guessed it wasn't his business. I just got through gathering team members. I'm set to begin searching for Danzo. I'll be leaving the land of eddies in a few days. I'm not sure when I'll be back, Sasuke said. Upon this declaration, Sasuke noticed an indecipherable look on Makoto's face. Oh, I see. I'd forgotten about that arrangement. I was set to head to the lands of Kurigakure, ensuring things stay in order while the Mizukage heads into the Cage Summit. I want you to be careful, Sasuke, Makoto warned. I'll be fine, the Uchiha claimed, heading toward his original destination. Makoto heard his footsteps grow smaller and smaller before she released a breath. I can't do this. I don't even know how to go about doing something like this at all. I need help, Makoto thought to herself. Well, if anything good came out of this, at least Sasuke wouldn't be around for a while. Maybe that would be enough to get her thoughts in order. Or she'd just be an even bigger wreck than she currently was. This was her son she was talking about after all. Surely, she couldn't follow in Kushina's footsteps. This was asinine. Makoto-sama, Yuna interrupted, making Sasuke's mother turn to her. There's no fun in knowing everything, Yuna replied. Amidst her entire ordeal and overthinking, Yuna's words rang through Makoto's head. Finally, Makoto shook her head and straightened her hair. It seemed that life without the emotional stunting nature of the Uchiha had freed her in good and not so good ways. Regardless of matters, she was still a former clan head's wife. She should be able to make decisions responsibly and intelligently. Makoto exhaled and cleared her throat. After a moment, she walked after her son and found him in the Uchiha meeting room. Sasuke, she called, drawing his attention from his notes and a myriad of maps on the table in front of him. Would you mind accompanying me somewhere? It shouldn't take long, Makoto said, hoping she sounded more confident to him than she did to herself. Had he thought more about it, Sasuke would have asked her where they were going. Yet, his mind had been consumed with his plans. Of course, his mother's voice was a welcome break against the backdrop of his own thoughts. Sure, he said. It wasn't like he hated spending time with his mother, even though the request was rather sudden. Pleased though hesitant, Makoto nodded. Thank you. I suppose I'll see you soon then, she commented, drumming the door frame for a moment. She then left him alone, allowing Sasuke to continue what he'd been doing before. Night quickly came upon the land of whirlpools as Naruto finally finished packing. Ordinarily, he'd just teleport to Iwagakure, but he opted for having some time to help Yukimaru and Hanabi get acquainted with one another away from the political affairs of the world. It would also give him an excuse to have some time with Yuri and Yura. He knew that he hadn't spent as much time with them as he should have. Though to be fair, he was in the midst of his honeymoon. Just so you know, I'm not exactly pleased to know that when I wake up you'll be gone. Naruto smiled, turning his head to see his mother combing her hair. His eyes lingered on her luscious frame, her nightgown hugging her skin in a way that set his chest aflame. I promise I'll make it up to you. I've actually got something planned for you when I get back, Naruto claimed. Intrigued, Kushina turned her head. Oh, do you now? You have my interest. What nefarious thing do you have planned for me? She asked. Too eager to leave it, Naruto stood up and walked over to her. He whispered into her ear. Kushina's eyes grew wider and wider as the flush on her face stained redder and redder. Unwilling to leave her, Naruto grabbed his wife's waist and trailed his hands up, leaving a teasing hand upon her breast. And you won't even have the chance to beg me to stop, Naruto boasted. Kushina turned to her husband and smiled. You've gotten good at seduction lately, she whispered huskily, her voice dripping with need. Naruto smiled. You bring it out of me, he answered. The two then shared a heated kiss that promised more. Unfortunately, it would have to be left unfulfilled for now. Neither was confident in their self-control. If they started, there was no way they were going to stop this time. Well, Kushina wasn't. Next time, something was going to break, whether it was her hips, her son's pelvis, or their bed. She was sure of that.